The stargrass liquid was so unstable it would blow at the least waver of heat, and the spirit-accumulating flower liquid was maddeningly thick and slow to clean. I held my whole mind on the smallest change in the furnace. Purification done, then fusion, and the moment the five converged, the energy clash erupted 3 times harder than a true chi pills. My mind jolted. A muffled thud sounded, a burnt reek rose, and I opened the lid on black gooey dregs. The first set ruined. My rhythm of feeding spiritual power infusion had been wrong, and the stargrass and spirit-accumulating flower fought and had to be added half a breath apart. I noted it, cleaned the furnace, and set the second. It failed too, the spirit-accumulating flower still not pure enough, its impurity sparking rejection and fusion. The third failed on a hair of temperature. The fourth, the fifth, 8 sets in a row gone to black lumps. The smell in the room past bearing, my mind drained and my fingers trembling. 16 spirit stones. Gone. I looked at the 2 sets left. On the 9th, I reviewed all 8 failures, every fault ingrained, and lit the furnace with a changed plan. I slowed purification by half to spend more spiritual power pushing each liquid to its cleanest limit. I offset the stargrass and spirit-accumulating flower by half a breath and tuned the rhythm of my power fine. The liquids turned slow and fused. 7 parts, 8, 9, 1 step from done. My mind stretched to breaking. Then the familiar loss of control welled up from deep in the liquid. A fishbone stuck in the throat at the worst moment, and a muffled sound came, and the 9th failed. I stared at the dregs a long time. The last set. I went out, splashed ice water on my face until it dripped off my chin, and the night wind cleared my head. Back inside, I sat again for the 10th set. Guaranteed. The word surfaced and hung over me like a net. I lit the furnace, and through warming adding, purification, I gave every step my absolute best. 9 failures worth of experience erupting at once. My hands fluid, almost rhythmic. In fusion, the 5 met and that familiar conflict came. I felt it coming, and guaranteed triggered a stroke of inspiration. A hand at my back, the runaway liquid calming at once. My hands sealed, I willed it to condense, and the furnace rang long and deep, far louder than for a true chi pill. A rich, heavy fragrance poured from the seams and stirred the power in my own body. I threw the lid open. 4 pills, a size larger than true chi pills. Pale blue all over, fine light patterns flowing on their skin. First-grade chi gathering pills, and 4 of them. I sniffed one. Pure, no impurity, then touched it to my tongue. Cool. A stream of power running straight into my meridians and circling once before settling obedient in my dantian. High quality. Feeling that power spread, the bottleneck of days loosened, and I sat and circled the blazing flame formula, guiding the trace to my dantian's core. It surged, and under the pill's potency and days of buildup, the barrier to the 3rd layer cracked at last. While the iron was hot, I swallowed a 2nd pill, and power flooded my meridians like a tide, and the barrier shattered, the pool in my dantian swelling, its concentration and quality rising a level. The 3rd layer of chi refinement. I let out a long breath and opened my eyes to a refreshed panel. It read Host, Age 8, 3rd layer of chi refinement, the blazing flame formula at major achievement, the 13 swords, the sword intent prototype. My entries were strong roots and red sprout. Diligence, extraordinary savvy, bronze skin, and iron bones. Guaranteed. I was 1 step from the biolac requirement of the 4th layer by 12. I held the token and cared little for the condition. But a man still needs a little pressure. I put away the 2 remaining pills and stretched. I had the method now, and though the success rate was 1 in 10, with guarantee behind me 1 batch was certain per 10 sets, a stable output. 4 chi gathering pills fetched 16 spirit stones against 20 for the materials, still a loss. But the rate would climb with practice as the true chi pills had, from 1 in 10 to the current half. Once 30 or 40 and 100 was reachable, 3 or 4 batches from 10 sets at 3 or 4 pills each would cover the cost clean. Light footsteps came, and So Yun's voice calling me to breakfast. I answered, tidied the furnace and dregs, checked the room showed nothing, and went out. She stood there sniffing, remarking on that smell again, asking whether my father had done more alchemy last night. I nodded and said his skills were poor and it had blown up again. She looked sympathetically toward his rooms and sighed that Uncle Yuke did not have it easy. I said nothing and walked to the dining room. After a couple of steps, she added that her father could rise today and wished to speak with me. I said I would come after breakfast. In the guest room, So-hwa sat by the bed in an oversized old tunic of my father's, his left hand freshly bandaged in neat white strips. So-yun's work, slowly working the fingers. The grayish-purple had faded a little, but the fingertips still trembled when he bent them. He waved me to a chair and asked after nothing of himself, only greeted me. His color was much better than half a month back, some blood in his face at least. I asked how his body was, and he moved the left hand and said far stronger than days ago. The 2 true chi pills had told. Some clogged places in the meridians had opened. Then he said he knew the family was not well off, and I should spare him no more pills. His life had been snatched back, he said, and walking alive out of the Jin pharmacy was already more than he could thank for. I let that pass and, after a moment, changed the subject, asking whether a year in the Jin pharmacy had made him clear on the place. He was surprised and asked what I wanted to know. Anything, I said. What he touched, saw, heard. He was silent a while, then spoke. The pharmacy manager was Jin Bong, a younger cousin of Jin Chang at the third layer, and on the surface the shop sold patent medicines and herbs, but the real money lay in the backyard. A secret room there was kept for compounding experimental pills, and in a year he had tested at least 100 kinds. Most failed, the reactions ranging from vomiting and flux at the mild end to bleeding from the 7 orifices at the worst. He had seen a fellow tester, a 9th layer postnatal man far tougher than he, try a new pill in the 3rd month and rupture all 5 organs on the spot and die. I tapped my knee twice and asked whether the Jin family compounded those formulas themselves. No, he said. Sure of it. The formulas came from outside, brought in every month or two. Jin Bong prepared them and found testers to check the effects. From outside, from whom? I asked. He did not know, being only a tester kept from such things. But once, waiting in the poorly walled secret room, he had heard Jin Bong talking to a man whose voice he did not know. The man told him that batch of formulas came from those above, and that the Jin family must finish the testing within 2 years and screen out the effective ones to report back. I frowned faintly. Those above. Who stood above the Jin family? A mere chi refinement house whose chief sat at the 5th layer with an old ancestor rumored at the 8th. In the whole immortal world they were nothing, and whoever gave them orders would stand at foundation establishment or higher. Anything else? I asked. He thought, then said yes. Beneath the backyard ran a hidden passage. Once at midnight, dizzy with medicine, wandering the yard he had trodden a loose slab that rang hollow, wind blowing up from the gap. And then, I asked, then he was found, beaten and shut in solitary 3 days, he said with a twist of his mouth. After that 2 more guards were set in the backyard, and he never went near the spot again. I sorted it in my mind. A secret room, a hidden passage and testing formulas for those above. Worth remembering. I asked whether he had told my father any of it, and he shook his head. There had been no need before. I stood and told him to speak of none of it to anyone for now, so Jan included, and he asked what I meant to do. Nothing, I said at the door, looking back, only to rest and mend, that the family, though poor, could easily keep one more, and the rest we would take slowly. In the courtyard, So-Yun squatted by the stove cooking red bean porridge for her father and offered me a taste, but I waved it off and went to the main house, where my grandfather sat under the old locust carving that piece of wood. A year's work now roughed into the shape of a woman. I sat beside him and told him everything So-Hwa had said, in full. His knife stopped. He repeated the words, hidden passage, experimental formulas, those above, and pondered a long time, then said I had done right. I should not get involved and should act as if I knew nothing. He was shrewd. He had already suspected the Jin family had a backer, since their alchemists never showed their faces, yet they bought vast quantities of herbs of every attribute year-round. Truly suspicious. Once I broke into the 4th layer, he said, the family would follow me to settle in the market outside the Biolak sect. The waters of the city ran deep, and it was no place to stay. I was days from turning 9, and so Hua had been with us near half a year, called recuperation, though everyone knew in their hearts the chaotic medicine in his meridians could not be driven out. My spared true chi pills eased the surface and cleared some channels, but the deep damage kept worsening, and he knew it best of all. He was a postnatal martial artist, not an immortal cultivator, and such a man's lifespan ran little past a mortal's, 80 or 90 at most. He could no longer even hold the 1st layer, 7 or 8 of 10 meridians ruined, the poison eating his organs. By his own reckoning, he had a year or 2. He never said it to anyone. After autumn, his appetite plainly fell, where once he drank half a bowl of Nanny O's rib soup, now pushing it away after 2 or 3 sips. So Yun fretted and tried every trick to feed him. Osmanthus cakes, red bean porridge, lotus seed soup, 3 meals a day, never repeating. He would take them smiling, eat a few bites, and give her a thumbs up, calling it delicious, better than Nanny O's, and her eyes would curve happy as she ran to the kitchen for more. The moment her back turned, the smile fell from his face, and he would look down at the bowl, stir it twice, and set it aside. One evening he sat at the guest window watching the yard through the half-open shutters. So Yun squatted at the well washing vegetables, sleeves to her elbows, a pair of clean white wrists showing. She was 11 now and much taller, ponytailed in a lotus-colored dress the family had given her. I sat on the platform under the old tree reading, turning a page now and then, looking up at the sky. Wash done, she rose with the basin and paused by me, telling me they were stewing chicken soup tonight with old ginseng, and to come drink some after my cultivation. I hummed and turned a page, and she went to the kitchen, steps light, ponytail swaying. Against the window frame, So Hua watched his daughter's back a long time. She had grown tall. She had blossomed. When she smiled, she was the very image of her mother. He turned slowly and drew a folded paper from under his pillow. 3 days in the writing, revised 7 times, and read it once more, then folded it back and tucked it away. Late that night, the courtyard was still, Nanny O's snoring faint to the east wall, and the guest door opened soft. So Hua came out. He had changed back into the old long robe he first arrived in, washed past counting, the bandage gone from his left hand to show the grayish-purple fingertips. On his feet were the cloth shoes So Yun had made him last month, dense stitched soles 3 layers thick. He stood looking up at a round, bright moon, then crept to the door of her side room and bent to peek through the crack. It was black inside, the girl deep asleep. He squatted at the threshold, his lips moving with no sound, and after a while stood, drew the folded paper and slid it through the crack where it lay flat on the floor. He straightened, took one last long look at that door, and turned for the gate. It was unbarred. He pulled it open, slipped out, and drew it shut behind him. The alley was empty but for a single bent shadow. He walked very slow, stopping every few steps to breathe, and he did not look back. At first light, a rooster woke So-yeon, and her foot found the paper on the floor. She picked it up and opened it to her father's crooked hand, the writing unlovely. It said her name. It said father was leaving. It said she lived well with the Yuk family, so father was at peace. It said father knew his own body, that it could not be cured, and staying would only burden the family and grieve her. It said he had done nothing worthwhile his whole life, and having her was the one good thing he ever did. It said the Yuk family had shown great kindness, and young Master Yuk was a good child, and that she should stay by my side, servant or maid, it did not matter. If she could one day become a wife with someone to shelter her, he would rest easy in the ground. It said not to look for him, that she would not find him. It said live well. She sat stunned a long while, then ran barefoot from the room calling for her father. The guest room stood open and empty, the bedding folded neat, his old teacup washed and set upside down on the table. Clutching the paper, she rushed to the gate and out into the alley, empty, ran a few steps toward the street, looked back, and froze in place. Father, she said. She squatted and buried her face in her knees, the paper crushed to a ball in her palm. After a while, her shoulders shook. No loud wailing, only that silent shaking, as if afraid to wake someone. I came out of the main house in gray martial clothes and saw her at the gate, and walked over and stood beside her. Jan, I said. She looked up, eyes red, face wet, and said her father was gone, that he had left a letter, and held up the crumpled paper. I took it and read, then folded it and gave it back, and told her to go inside. It was cold. I pulled her up, and only when her bare feet met the icy stone did she notice she wore no shoes. I walked her to the side wing and told her to put them on first. She did and ran back to grab my sleeve, asking whether her father was about to and gripping so hard her knuckles whitened. It was not that she had not known, she said, that over the half year he ate less and less, and she had seen it all. He thought she did not understand, but she did, and she sniffled and asked whether he had not wanted her to see him go. I drew my sleeve free and patted her head and said her father was a stubborn man, that once he decided no one could stop him. Her mouth puckered and the tears fell again. But he decided right. I said, he entrusted you to the Yuk family. She wiped her face and looked at me. I turned for the main house and said her father's letter told her to be a maid, but if she was willing she should stay, that the family could keep her. Not as a maid, I added after a moment, just as one of our own. A few steps on I remembered, and turned back to add one thing, to go wash her face first, and then eat. Nanny O had steamed meat buns. She stood clutching the letter, watching me go, and after a long while lowered her head, smoothed the paper careful, pressed it to her chest, and turned back into her room. Inside, my grandfather already sat at the table with his tea, and asked whether So Hua was gone. Yes, I said. He blew the steam and said it was expected, that the man had coughed blood at night these past 2 weeks, and my uncle had heard it twice. I sat across from him and asked whether he had known when So Hua left. Who in the family did not, he said, and there was no need to strip a dying man of his last dignity. I said no more. A postnatal martial artist slipping away unnoticed past 3 chi refinement cultivators who entered the Tao through the body was not an easy thing. His finger tapped the table, and he asked what the letter said. That the girl should stay with the family and follow me, I answered. He hummed and left it, for our line was thin and it was good to sow more seed. From outside came So-yeon's muffled, broken sobbing, and I listened a few breaths, then bent to my porridge. Some things are better after a good cry. 3 days on her eyes were still red, but she cried no more. When Nanny-O cooked, she squatted to tend the fire, and when I cultivated, she sat quiet nearby reading or working her true chi. And yes, she had broken into the first layer of the postnatal realm. When guests came, she withdrew to the back and served tea with nimble hands. My father remarked to me in private that the child was so sensible it broke the heart, and I hummed and said little. I had told only my grandfather the letter's content, and his stance was plain. The girl stayed either as maid or as a junior of the family. her standing to be settled later when I was grown. Setting Sohua aside, I had weightier things in hand. 2 months back, I had already laid my cards before my grandfather, in this same study. When I set the chi gathering pills on the table, his hand had trembled, and he asked whether I had truly succeeded. Yes, I said. He smelled the pill over and over, licked it, and was silent a long time while I waited. 10 sets of materials, 4 pills of furnace, I reported. The rate 1 in 10 now, but climbing with practice as the true chi pills had. He set the pill down, a finger pressing it, and said, "Not for sale." I nodded. Of the same mind, my father had only publicly learned true chi pills less than a year ago, and to suddenly make chi gathering pills, who would believe it? He rose on his cane and paced, telling me to keep the chi gathering pills buried in my heart and tell no one, not even the Na family. Keep supplying them true chi pills as before. Use the earned stones to buy chi gathering materials, refine them myself, use them myself, give any surplus to our own, and pour everything into myself. I asked where to buy the materials. Still through the Nan family, he thought, and said yes, since the materials were not rare and every herb shop in the city carried them, so having the A family buy would draw no eyes. But Na Bong would surely ask why, I said. He waved it off and said he would handle it. Sure enough, it did not take long for Na Bong to catch the scent. He came as usual to collect exactly 50 true chi pills, pouched them happily, settled the month's material payment, and turning to leave, he paused and said there was something to ask. My grandfather, carving in the courtyard, let his knife pause and told him to go ahead. In the list my father had lately asked him to buy, Na Bong said, were quite a few first-grade chi gathering materials: stargrass, spirit accumulating flower, blue moonstone, and no small amount, 7 or 8 sets a month, and these were not cheap. So he was curious whether my father was practicing with them. My grandfather did not look up and kept carving. He said Na Bong knew the boy's temper, ambitions higher than the sky, set on challenging the chi gathering pill, told he was unrealistic and would not listen. So what could a father do? Na Bong laughed loud, said the personality fit, and was relieved, then stepped closer and lowered his voice to speak from the heart. Chi gathering pills were not on a level with true chi pills, he said. It had taken my father half a year to steady even those, so a chi gathering pill would want 5 or 6 years of foundation. He should go easy and not pour the whole family fortune in. My grandfather looked up and sighed, his acting flawless, saying did he not know it, but the boy was stubborn and could not be stopped, so he would treat it as tuition, only 7 or 8 sets a month, a loss they could bear. Na Bong patted his shoulder and told him not to worry over the materials. He would get them at the lowest price, family as they were, no margin taken. After seeing him off, my grandfather held up a finger to me, fooled him. I leaned in the doorway chewing a blade of grass and asked whether Na Bong was trustworthy. He was silent a moment, then said trustworthy but not wholly, an honest man himself, but behind him stood old Na Hongwon, and that one was very shrewd. I spat the grass out and said I understood. By now my chi gathering rate had climbed from 1 in 10 to 2 in 10, 10 sets yielding 2 furnaces of 3 or 4 pills each, a steady 7 or 8 a month. Everyone went into me, not a single one leaking out. To the world my father was still that half-baked alchemist who knew only true chi pills, faking a furnace blast now and then for Na Bong's eyes. I thought he rather enjoyed the acting. That evening I finished a round of cultivation. Tomorrow was my 9th birthday, which meant the yearly draw. I glanced at my entries. After the system's second version, the green odds stood at 2 in 10. Last year guaranteed had turned my whole road toward alchemy. What of this year? I drew a breath and rose to bathe and change. For though I knew the ritual was pure comfort, a transmigrator's bones held one iron rule, that before a draw one offers to heaven. I soaked a full hour in Nanny O's hot water, scrubbing even under my nails twice, changed into fresh fine cotton, dried and tied my hair. So Yun asked through the door what I was doing so long, and I said bathing. She asked, in the middle of the night, and I did not answer and closed the window. Only an oil lamp remained. I sat cross-legged on the bed, closed my eyes and steadied my breath. In my old life, I had been a heavy spender in mobile games. I had tried every superstition, birthday 10 poles, bathing in incense, reverse psychology, and whether they worked or not did not matter. Only that with the ritual in place, my mind stayed calm. Come. I pulled up the entry system and it asked whether to begin the yearly draw. Begin. A swirling orb of light rose on the panel, flickering white and green. I stared with sweating palms, white, white, until it stopped on green. A green entry. My heart skipped, the orb burst, and the words flooded in. It congratulated me and named a green entry, loan, the power to borrow from the heavenly Tao in a very limited way. 1 chance every 1,000 years, repayment time-bound, where I would be struck by lightning and die without a whole corpse. I was stunned, 2 seconds, then stunned 3 more, and read it again. Borrow from the heavenly Tao. Once 1,000 years, repay within a limit. Struck by lightning, no whole corpse. I lowered my hand. This was only green. My other green entries were extraordinary savvy for comprehension, bronze skin, and iron bones for physique, guaranteed for 1 alchemy success in 10, each already a heaven-defying fortune in this world. Yet beside loan, they were another order of thing. Borrowing from the heavenly Tao itself, and only green, surely a gold entry mispriced. I calmed my excitement and read it over. Very limited, repay within a limit. Struck by lightning, no whole corpse. Turning the words, my heat cooled. Very limited meant a ceiling, and a low one. Repay within a limit meant borrow and return, or die. The two restraints together were why it was only green. It was in essence a credit card, the kind with a tiny limit, brutal interest, and ruin on default. I sat and thought a long while. Used well, this entry could rewrite fate. Used poorly, it would only hurry my sudden death. So I decided first to test where its boundaries lay, since caution makes a long road. I made my first request, to loan my cultivation straight up to Foundation establishment. No response, not even a bubble. As expected, how could raising a cultivation base fall under very limited? I tried to loan a magic treasure, no response. 1,000 spirit stones, no response. An entry itself, no response. A heaven and earth treasure, power directly a change of talent, all of it vanished like stones into the sea. The very limited was no polite phrase. None of the ordinary resources could be borrowed. I changed tack and asked it to create a supreme cultivation technique, and the panel finally answered. It was possible, on the condition that within 10 years I create a supreme technique and return it to the heavenly Tao. I nearly laughed aloud. Create a supreme technique in 10 years, when I stood at the 3rd layer and would be at best Foundation establishment by then. A joke, no different from a death sentence, and there was fine print besides that the borrowed technique could not be cultivated in my realm. I could not even practice it and had to return one of the same grade in 10 years. The heavenly Tao as a lender was crueler than any loan shark of my old life. I closed the option. If techniques would not do, what of spiritual roots? Roots were the foundation of a cultivator's foundation, and I held a low-grade fire root whose speed was about 1/3 of a medium root's. If I could lift its quality, I framed the words and asked carefully to raise my spiritual root's quality by 1 minor grade. The panel lit and text emerged, and I held my breath and read. It would loan, but I did not rush to confirm, reading the repayment first. The loan gave a miscellaneous spiritual root of green quality, low-grade root quality +1. The cost was that in next year's draw I would inevitably draw that same miscellaneous spiritual root as repayment, reclaimed at once by the heavenly Tao. In other words, no free upgrade, but spending 2 draws to buy 1 root improvement. My face went complex. A loss? A miscellaneous root +1 on my low-grade fire root would lift it a small grade, still low but near the medium threshold. By my reckoning, if a low-grade root's efficiency was 1, a medium was about 3, a high 6, a top 9. The gap's enormous, and my speed of 1 would rise to near 2. It would double, which meant my time to the 4th layer would halve, and every day's cultivation from then on would stand a step higher, a one-time investment paying for life. But the cost was next year's draw locked and reclaimed, a whole year's chance wasted, and a yearly draw was too precious. Guaranteed alone having made me an alchemist from 1 pull. What if next year's would have been better still? I thought long, then decided. Gamble on drawing a green next year? Ridiculous. The second version held only white and green. Green still at 2 in 10. So even drawing normally, there was an 8 in 10 chance of a white that might help or might not. A root +1 was a certain permanent compounding gain. When a large certain benefit sat before me, why gamble on a small uncertain one? My grindlord experience taught me that stable gains crush gambling. I drew a breath and confirmed the loan. The text flickered. Loan successful, it read. The host obtaining a miscellaneous spiritual root of green quality. Low-grade root quality +1. The repayment was locked. Next year's draw inevitably that same root, reclaimed on acquisition, unable to be used, synthesized, or kept. The moment I confirmed, my body shook hard, heat welling from deep in my dantian through every meridian, a sensation past describing, as if something rooted in me had thickened all at once. My spiritual power, before a small stream, ran now like a narrow river, still short of a true medium roots torrent, but nearer than before. After a full circuit, the heat settled in my dantian, ripples spreading on the pool as its capacity swelled by near 1/3. I breathed out turbid air, circled the blazing flame formula, and felt the flow faster. I flexed my fingers, and a ball of fire coalesced, orange-red dancing at my knuckles. Its heat, steadiness, and control all much improved. I put out the flame and read the panel. A new entry added, miscellaneous spiritual root, green. The lone entry now bore a line of gray text. Used, not to be used again for 1,000 years. 7 entries, 2 white, 5 green. But next year's draw was in truth nullified. I counted on my fingers. 9 this year, having used the loan. 10 next, when it would be reclaimed. 11 the year after, the next real draw. In effect, I had drawn next year's entry early. Use it early, enjoy it early. I swallowed a chi-gathering pill and felt a world of difference. Before, a root absorbed and converted only 6 or 7 parts in 10 of a pill's power. The rest wasted. And now 8.5. The same pill that once gave 6 or 7 parts of spiritual power now gave 8.5. I lay staring at the ceiling. My core was complete now. Comprehension, physique, alchemy guarantee, and root, all 4 dimensions filled. A year passed in a blink. As foretold, the system drew the miscellaneous spiritual root and repaid it before I grew used to it, the loan on its 1,000-year cooldown. I sat with my Dantean pool overflowing like a pot near boil. The gain of the upgraded root fully shone over the year. The 4th layer, once 2 years off, I now stood firmly upon after 1. My chi-gathering consumption far outran expectation, nearly all 7 or 8 monthly pills going into my own stomach. Through massive practice, I had forced the rate from 2 and 10 to 5 and 10. 10 sets, giving 5 batches of 3 or 4 pills. Complete pill freedom. I returned the last trace of power to my Dantean, and a slight crisp sound came from within. Some invisible shackle snapping, the pool swelling near double. The flow rising a whole level. The 4th layer of chi refinement achieved. Age 10, the 4th layer. I breathed out and pushed the door open on morning sun. So Yun drew water at the well and smiled a greeting. 12 now and grown into a slim, graceful girl like a budding lotus. I nodded and went to the main house, where my grandfather sat under the old locust holding the carving, in the likeness of a woman with a faint gentleness in her features. It was my grandmother, Mo Yu. I sat across from him. He set down the knife and looked me over and asked, 4th layer. Yes. He was silent, then rubbed his tea-bowl gently and said, a year faster than I expected. I did not answer. Grandfather, I said, it is time to go. His hand on the bowl paused, and he looked up at a grandson of 10. The courtyard was very quiet, only wind in the leaves, and after a long while he set the bowl down with a soft click, and said it was indeed time. He rose on his cane and swept his gaze over the old yard he had lived in for decades, and said the city could no longer hold me. He turned and looked at me. The 2 acres of low-grade spirit field were the roots of the family, he said, but also a shackle. He would go find Na Bong at once and sell them. For with the spirit stones we would have capital to plant ourselves once we reached the Biolac market town. I nodded. I had thought it long ago. 2 acres made only about 200 stones a year, better sold for a founding sum. My father and uncle came out, plainly having overheard, my father's face complex, holding both hope for my future and an attachment to home. He asked whether we were really selling. My grandfather glared and said if not, did we sit here waiting for the Jin family to covet them? My talent could be hidden a while, but not forever, and only in the Biolac sect would I truly be a fish in the open sea. His cane thumped the ground, and he told them to pack, nothing but the essentials. They answered and went in. He sat again, picked up the carving, and looked at it quiet, telling me my father was a flighty man but sentimental at heart. Once we left this time, he said, it would be hard to return. I looked at his graying temples and said softly that we would make our home at the Biolac sect. He smiled and said nothing. That afternoon, Na Bong hurried over and seized my grandfather's hand at the door, crying that he could not just leave like this, it was too sudden. My grandfather patted his hand and said the child was grown and must go out to make his way, that the small pond of the city could not raise a true dragon. Na Bong glanced at me and sighed. The Na family bought the 2 acres at the market rate of 2,000 low-grade spirit stones. After the deed was signed, Na Bong drew a heavy pouch and said it was the payment. He added that before we left, his family's old ancestor asked the whole Yuk family to his residence for a simple farewell meal. My grandfather pondered and agreed. After Na Bong left, my father looked at the pouch, still dazed, and asked whether the family had suddenly grown rich. My grandfather gave him a sour look and said 2,000 stones would not even buy a decent courtyard at the Biolac market. Ignorant fool. My father scratched his head and grinned foolishly. So Yun stood quiet at the side watching everyone bustle. Wherever the family went, she would go. Her father's dying wish and her own choice both. The Na farewell was set in the Lake Heart Pavilion of the inner court. The dishes came from the city's best house, the Drunken Immortal restaurant, and the wine was a 10-year spirit brew the Na family had aged. Old Na Hungwon attended in person, giving us great face. The moment Na Soso saw me, she ran over, shoved others aside, and sat right at my side, 10 now in a pink dress with 2 small buns. Cute past description. She grabbed my sleeve, her mouth pouting, her eyes reddening, and asked whether I was really leaving, whether she would never see me again. I took an osmanthus cake and handed it to her and said, just eat. She took a big bite, and her tears fell drop by drop. wailing that she did not want me to go. My head ached a little. I thought, then held out my little finger and said, "Pinky swear." She stopped, sobbing, and asked what we were swearing, and I said that every month hereafter I would reach her once by communication talisman. Her eyes lit and she hooked her finger to mine, demanding I not lie. "No lying," I said. She broke into a smile at last, stuffing the rest of the cake in until her cheeks bulged like a hamster's. At the head of the table, Na Hongwan watched, raised his cup to my grandfather, and said this grandson of his was steady and kept his word, and would surely be great. "The two families pact," he said. "The Na family would not forget." My grandfather raised his cup too and said the Yuk family as well, and the two old foxes traded a glance and drank, everything understood without a word. After the banquet we returned to the emptied courtyard. Nanny O did not come, her family all in the city. The family gave her a severance enough to see out her old age in peace and asked the Na family to look after her. Standing in the bare yard, my father's eyes reddened, and he said we were really leaving. My grandfather ignored him and only told me to begin. I nodded and drew the biolic entry token from my robe. Green jade, warm and smooth, and slowly fed spiritual chi into it. It gave a low hum, and a beam of green light shot up and burst above the city into a vast character mark of the sect. Every cultivator in the city, whatever their level, felt the pressure of a superior sect and looked up in shock. In the Na residence, Na Hongwan watched the mark and murmured that they were gone, that this connection was made at last. In the Jin residence, Jin Chang stared at the mark livid, grinding out the Yuk name, and mine. In less than an incense stick, a green jade flying boat broke the clouds and hung silent over our little courtyard. Not large, some 30 feet long, its surface shimmering, clearly no common thing. A beam shot down and wrapped the five of us. I felt my body go light and stood the next moment on the deck. My grandfather, my father, my uncle, and So Yun beside me, startled, scanning about. The boat rose, and the city shrank fast beneath our feet. I stood at the rail watching the small place where I had lived 10 years dwindle to a blurred black dot, not knowing when we would meet again. I felt no grief, only that a chapter had closed. The boat was steady yet startling fast, an invisible shield over the deck blocking the high astral winds. A female cultivator in the dress of a biolac inner disciple came out from the cabin, no more than 20 or 30 in look and quite beautiful. And yet, astonishing, she was already at the great perfection of chi refinement. She sized me up and smiled gently, asking whether the little friend was homesick. I looked at her and said, "Senior, yes." What I missed was not the city, but that blue star I could never return to. She misread it and softened further, telling me not to call her senior but senior sister, that her name was Noe-un and the third elder had sent her to receive me. Then she asked, curious, what my tie to the third elder was. I thought and gave an ambiguous answer, that the third elder had an old connection with our family which could mean anything from thin to deep, and hearing it her manner warmed several degrees. As an inner disciple she had stuck at chi refinement perfection 3 years, the sex foundation establishment pill quota thin and fiercely contested. An elder's backing, even a single word, would much improve her odds. So I was the descendant of an old friend, she said, her smile more sincere, apologizing for any lack of respect. If I did not understand anything in the sect, she offered, I could ask her any time. I took the chance to ask her to tell me about the sect, needing a channel into its workings, and she was glad to oblige. It happened to be the once in 10 years mountain opening for recruits, she said, the sect taking only disciples under 12. Those with a medium root or better became outer disciples directly, and those with low roots needed the 4th layer of chi refinement. With the third elder's token I could enter without exam, straight as an outer disciple. I knew this already and nodded for her to go on. There were tens of thousands of outer disciples in fierce competition, she said. To reach the inner sect one needed the 7th layer before 20, and to pass the inner assessment, only then counted a core of the sect. And true disciples? I asked. 2 ways only, she said, holding up 2 fingers. Either favored by a golden core elder and taken as a personal disciple, or breaking into foundation establishment oneself, and then choosing a golden core elder to serve, standing equal to a true disciple. I was a little puzzled and asked how the third elder, herself at foundation establishment, could take personal disciples. A look of awe crossed her face. There was something I did not know, she said, that though the third elder stood at foundation establishment, she was different. She had cultivated 70 years to foundation establishment perfection, 1 step from the golden core Tao, and more. The Biolac sect master was her own master. My heart stirred. The sect master's student, a background far from ordinary. Generally Noe unlamented, a sect elder must be at least golden core. That the third elder held an elder's seat at foundation establishment perfection showed how the sect master prized her. Her authority in the sect no weaker than some golden core elders. I understood at once. So Narin's standing was that high, and my grandfather's choice to take only a token and not her discipleship was wise indeed. Rising on favor leaves the foundation unstable and makes one a target, while climbing by oneself is the surest road. She went on naming everything she knew as if counting family treasures. While we talked, the boat passed through layered seas of cloud. Below appeared an unbroken mountain range wrapped in immortal mist and rich in spiritual chi, and on its skirts the outline of a vast bustling market. Noe-un pointed to it and said that was the Bayolak market, that by sect rule the families of outer disciples could not enter the sect and were settled in the market. She would take us there first. The boat set down at the market's docking point, and a wave of spiritual chi several times denser than the cities rushed at us. The streets teemed with cultivators of extraordinary bearing, and postnatal martial artists had to keep to the very edges, treated like dogs while cultivators walked everywhere. Under her guidance we reached the market office, and I stated plainly that I wished to buy a courtyard for my family. She smiled and showed her inner disciple token to the deacon, who turned respectful at once and asked her wishes. "Arrange a quieter courtyard fit for long living," she said. He brought out a market map and pointed to some newly available yards, quiet, with a small spirit-gathering array, best suited to family. I looked them over and chose one in the East District near the Sex Mountain Gate, and said it would do, to sign for 30 years. He reckoned the price at 1,000 low-grade spirit stones for the term, and my grandfather stepped up and handed over a storage pouch. 1,000 stones, half our wealth gone at once, and yet everyone felt it worth it. Though the yard held only 5 rooms, the whole market lay under a great spirit-gathering array, and cultivation here ran more than twice as fast as in the city. After the residence, my grandfather took me, with Noe-un along, to walk the market. He settled on a small storefront on a main street and said to lease it for 10 years. She was a little surprised, but helped bargain, and a 10-year lease came to 500 stones, thinning our savings another layer. Back at the yard, my father could not help asking what business we meant to do, newly arrived and already renting a shop. My grandfather glanced at me and said slowly, to buy medicinal herbs for me, and meanwhile to sell some pills. Everything in the family centered on me. With it all arranged, the next day I went alone to the Sex Mountain Gate for the disciple assessment. On the great plaza before the gate, over 1,000 children and their families had already gathered, and several deacons stood expressionless on a high platform, their voices carrying across the whole square. "Those over 12, step back," they called, and the spiritual root testing began, one by one in line. A child set a trembling hand on the testing stone. Low-grade earth root passed to the eastern waiting area. No root next. Crying and cheering wove together across the plaza. I stood in the queue, and when my turn came I touched the stone, and the impatient chief examiner called out the 4th layer of chi refinement. 10 years old, passed, next. I thought a moment, and still drew the token, and his face changed in an instant, greeting me as the 3rd elder's honored guest and begging pardon for any lack of respect. The moment I passed through the mountain gate, the spiritual chi thickened a level. Beneath my feet ran a broad stone path lined with nameless spirit plants whose leaves held a faint sheen. At its end the mountains overlapped, pavilions scattered among them, figures now and then flying overhead on swords. The outer disciple leading me walked ahead, glancing back at me every so often. He was in his early 20s, tall and thin, high cheekboned, his eyes always half squinted, a habit of curling his mouth when he spoke, his gaze lingering and sticky. He wore a faded green outer uniform patched at the hem, though the copper buttons at his sleeves were polished bright. He asked my name and I gave it. He named himself Mangi of the General Affairs Hall, in charge of receiving new disciples, and rubbed his hands and moved 2 steps nearer. "That token of mine," he said. In 6 years in the sect he had never seen one like it. A token signed by the 3rd elder in person, and he clicked his tongue. I glanced at him and said nothing. The token had shone for only a few seconds, and the man was well informed indeed. He chattered on, telling me not to think him talkative, that the sect held tens of thousands and the waters ran deep. I should ask him anything, since his cultivation was low but his knowledge of the sect's inner workings was total. I asked his cultivation. "The 5th layer of chi refinement," he said, patting his chest. 6 years stuck there, neither up nor down, eating and waiting to die. I said no more. An outer disciple at the 5th layer, 6 years in the General Affairs Hall, and now working hard to get close. It was not hard to guess what he was after. He led me through many turns and forks until he stopped before a cluster of buildings set against the mountainside and said we had arrived, the outer disciple residences. I looked around. They spread halfway up the mountain, upper and lower clearly divided. The upper were single courtyard villas, white walls and gray tiles, trees in the yards, a chi-gathering plate set outside each, arranged in neat rows of considerable scale. The lower were far shabbier thatched huts packed together. The paths between so tight 2 people would turn sideways to pass, the roofs uneven and some hold-through. The gap was plain to the eye. Mangi explained on his own. The residences came in 2 tiers. 1,000 villas stood up top, given directly to disciples with medium roots or better, or those an elder recommended. The thatched huts below held low-root disciples 4 to a room, sharing a kitchen and a well. 4 to a room would not leave space to turn around. "I need not worry," he said, and took a wooden plaque from his sleeve and handed it over with both hands. Entering with the 3rd elder's token meant a villa direct. Courtyard 91. A fine spot. I flipped the plaque, the number cut on the front, a pattern on the back, likely the key to the entrance array. He led me up, saying the lower a villa's number the better its place. The first 10 holding spiritual chi, a 5th richer than those behind. But those were taken by medium and above roots and rarely vacant, while 91 was upper middle, not bad. We reached the gate. The yard was small, a single entry, a main room, a side room, and a little court with an osmanthus tree and a stone vat beneath it. The furnishings were plain, bed and table and chair and shelf, all standard. But set into the floor at the room's center was a palm-sized array plate, its surface faintly rippling with spiritual power. A chi-gathering array. I stood a moment, sensing the spiritual chi, more than 3 times denser than the market town, so that cultivating here daily would run at least half again as fast. Mang Ji leaned in the doorway and asked if I was satisfied, and I nodded. Only then did he draw a bundle from his robe and lay it out, the standard supplies for new disciples. He shook open a folded garment, a green robe with white trim of fine cloth, several grades better than his own faded patchwork. 2 sets, one for spring and one for autumn. Then a small gray pouch, a storage pouch of 1 cubic yard, small but enough for daily things and pills. Then a wooden box with 3 pills on a cotton pad, and my nose caught the medicine. "Spirit Ascension pills," I said, and he blinked and gave a thumbs up, praising my nose. They were Tier 1 medium-grade pills for the middle stage of chi refinement. 3 a year to an outer disciple, the rest earned. I rolled one between my fingers. Tier 1 medium grade. I was already fluent at true chi pills, and ran half success on chi gathering pills, but the Spirit Ascension pill stood a level above the chi gathering pill, and if I could refine it, I set the thought aside and pouched them. The last thing was a sword, plain in a black lacquered wooden scabbard. I drew it, a narrow straight blade near 2 feet 7, sharp-edged but crudely patterned, a Tier 1 low-grade issue longsword. I sheathed it on the table. Everything was here, Mangi said, and straightened, then added, "One more thing, that new disciples could take 1 technique and 1 spell free from the scripture pavilion." I perked up and asked where it was. "Halfway up the east peak," he said, "east from the villas, past the martial field, up the stone steps." Then he lowered his voice to say the first floor was outer disciple basics, but with connections the second floor was another matter. I changed into the green and white robe and thanked him. He smiled attentively and said to find him for any help, that everyone knew Mang Ji of the General Affairs Hall. I took my sword and walked for the east peak, and behind me his smile faded as he watched me go, rubbed his chin, and turned off another way. The scripture pavilion stood halfway up the east peak, a 3-story stone building with no plaque, only 2 old characters carved on the doorposts. At the door an old man dozed on the threshold, dusty coarse robe, unshaven, hair a mess, a common old man to the eye. But the moment I set foot on the last stair my hair stood on end, not from pressure or killing intent, but the body's instinct at a cliff's edge. This dozing old man was unfathomable, and I stopped 3 steps off and did not approach. I named myself. A new outer disciple come for a technique and a spell. His snoring stopped, one eye opened, cloudy rolling me head to foot, and he said, "Token." I handed my outer disciple token. He glanced and tossed it back, and told me to pick on the first floor. 1 technique, 1 spell, then bring them for registration. He closed his eyes and the snoring resumed. Inside, the first floor was far larger than it looked. A Sumeru space, all 4 walls shelved floor to ceiling, dense with bamboo slips and silk and paper. Low racks down the middle. Labels sorted them. Technique, spell, miscellany. I went first to the techniques, ranged by the 5 elements and subdivided by grade, and walked to the fire section to read the tables of contents. Most I skipped after a glance. Too basic or outdated for my system. Until I turned up a thin silk scroll, the Blazing Flame Formula. Complete Manual of Chi Refinement. My hand stopped. I unrolled it, the contents whole from the first layer to the 12th. My own Blazing Flame Formula was the fragment the Ney family gave, good only to the 10th. And for an ordinary cultivator, the 10th layer was perfection. But No Eon had said on the boat that to break into Foundation establishment on one's own, without a pill, one must reach the 12th, a domain only a prodigy touches. And this manual filled in the 11th and 12th. Comparing the core verses, the first 10 layers were near identical, but the flow map ran finer, the vague nodes of the fragment marked clear. No need to hesitate, and I tucked it under my arm. The technique settled, I went to the spells, also sorted by element. The fire spells filling 2 rows. They ran superior and inferior, marked plainly, the inferior over 9 and 10, each labeled easy to learn and hard to master, power mediocre. I shook my head at a few, the fire bullet technique, the burning palm, the firewall, all basic staples with low ceilings. I turned to the 1 in 10 of superior spells, set apart in a single thin row. Each was labeled hard to learn and hard to master, power in a league of its own for the chi refinement stage. I picked up the first, Flame Burst, which detonates fire at a point for huge instant damage but needs 3 breaths to cool, poor for sustained fighting. Down, Crimson Flame Meteor, a long-range strike of fire arrows, strong penetration but ruinous on spiritual power, a few volleys then rest. Down. The third I picked up and opened, 5 Fire Arts, 2 lines I read 3 times each. Refined Demon Fire to control fire with fire, 1 fire at entry, 2 at minor achievement, 4 at major, 5 at perfection. It served attack, support, and alchemy alike, invincible among its rank in the chi refinement stage. I swallowed hard and turned to the text. The principle was not complex, that through a special method a cultivator refines a first-grade demon fire and fuses it with his own fire root for power past ordinary fire spells. But the conditions were savage. First, one must have demon fire, which comes from demon beasts or secret realms, scarce in itself, and refining it is perilous, for demon fire has spirit and will backlash at a slip. Second, refining demands extreme flame control and precision, and the scroll put it politely, that one with extraordinary savvy could enter in half a year, and one of mediocre aptitude might not in 10. Extraordinary savvy. The green entry on my panel was those very words, comprehension doubled, and more, the latter half, serving attack, support, and alchemy alike. Alchemy. I was an alchemist. I used my own root fire now capped in heat and purity. If I switched to demon fire, whose quality drives heat control, purification, and fusion all at once, a good demon fire could lift my success rate a whole level. And when I could also refine spirit ascension pills, I no longer hesitated, tucked the 5 Fire Arts with the complete blazing flame formula, and turned for the door. The old man still dozed. I set the 2 scrolls before him and said just these 2. He opened his eyes, took them, flipped through, and lingered a beat longer on the 5 Fire Arts, remarking that many choose this spell but few master it. I said nothing. He recorded my name and the 2 choices, drew the full versions from his storage pouch, and told me to take them, return the originals in a month, and copy them myself meanwhile. I pouched the scrolls, bowed, and went down. Back at Courtyard 91, I shut the door and spread both scrolls, first comparing the fragment and complete blazing flame formula page by page. I etched every supplement into my mind, the 11th and 12th layers, held after one read. Then the 5 Fire Arts, 3 times thicker than the technique. Over 20 pages of theory on demon fire alone before the entry method. I read every page without skipping, and on the 8th a passage caught me. The key to refining demon fire lay in wrapping the fire seed with divine thought. Then spiritual power served as a bridge to draw it into the body and store it in the Dantean Sea of Fire. It was a process demanding ultimate flame control, any slip letting the seed go wild and burn the meridians. Burn the meridians. I rubbed my chin. I had bronze skin and iron bones, a medium root bone, my body's resilience far past my rank, and having entered the Tao through the body I was no ordinary chi refinement frame. Where others feared burning their channels, my margin ran much wider, and with extraordinary savvy doubling my grasp, my learning would run double too. Outside, the sky went black. I closed the scrolls and began to copy them, for though a photographic memory is fine, a copy is safer. A tiny error in cultivation is the spark of deviation, and pale ink beats a bright memory. With a month's deadline, I meant to copy in 3 days and spend the rest studying, since copying is itself a form of cultivation. The scent of osmanthus drifted through the window crack as I dipped my brush and wrote the first character. Then a knock came at the gate. On my first day at the Violac sect, a night visitor. I set down the brush and asked who it was. A crisp woman's voice answered, asking whether the new disciple of 91 would open for a routine registration from the outer sect General Affairs Hall. I stood inside the gate, in no hurry. Routine registration when I had entered only today, all handled at the mountain gate, and Mangi had said nothing of more, and in the middle of the night besides. I stepped back and lightly circled my spiritual power, and asked her to show a token. A silence, then a smiling reply that the newcomer was cautious, and a token slid under the door. It was a common iron plate cut with outer sect General Affairs Hall Inspector, a spirit vein on the back. I tested the vein and it was real, but real and correct are 2 things. I pulled the door open. A young woman stood outside, 17 or 18, tall and slim, a high ponytail, features not delicate but sharp and clean, brows dark and straight, lips pressed thin. She wore the same green robe as me, but with a copper plate at her waist, reading Inspector. Her aura the 6th layer of chi refinement. She looked me over and I asked who she was. She shook the register in her hand and named herself Ryu Wool, an inspector of the Outer Sect's General Affairs Hall, telling me not to be nervous, that she made no trouble. 10 years old, she read, 4th layer, low-grade root, and I answered yes to each while she flipped her booklet. Courtyard 91, Yuke song, the details match, and she would ask 2 questions and go. I cleared the doorway and said please. She did not enter, only stood at the door. First, which hall I meant to join. The Outer Sect holding 6, mission, medicinal pill, artifact, formation, spirit plant, and general affairs, with a 3-month window before choosing. I thought and said undecided. She marked a cross. Second, my cultivation direction, since the Outer Sect assessed every quarter. For a 4th layer disciple, the standard was to win 1 match against an equal or submit equal mission contribution. 2 straight failures cut the monthly allowance, and 4 straight expelled one from the villas down to a hut. I noted the rule and said understood. She closed the booklet, tucked it away, and left. For 3 days I went nowhere, copying the complete Blazing Flame formula in 1 day and the 5 fire arts in 2. My hand ran fast and upright, spiritual power flowing as I silently traced the roots in my mind. By the 3rd evening, both were copied, and I set the originals aside to return, then reread the 5 fire arts entry chapter. The heart of it was one thing, refining the first demon fire. The scroll listed several low-grade demon fires fit for a beginner. The lowest and most docile, the Crimson Flame insect fire, born in a first-ranked demon insect called the Crimson Flame larva. Its heat was moderate, its spirit low, its resistance small, the first choice for a novice. Yet even for that gentlest flame, the scroll advised trying it only at the 6th layer or above, with an elder near to guard. I stood at the 4th, 2 layers short. I closed the copy and leaned back thinking, no rushing it. I would master the whole Blazing Flame formula, firm my theory, and push my cultivation up 2 layers before touching demon fire. I breathed out and sat cross-legged, the erased spiritual chi surging in, and ran the complete formula, reorganizing the base of my first 4 layers to the standard of the 11th and 12th. Every cycle felt smoother, the finer route lifting my efficiency visibly as I sank into meditation. Early next morning I carried the 2 originals to the East Peak. Returning them was simple, the old man dozing as ever, opening one eye to peek, nodding, sleeping again. I came out and stood on the steps. The East Peak's view opened over most of the Outer Sect. Disciples were already at morning drills on the distant martial field, sword-lightened spells and hand-to-hand making a lively scene. I tapped my storage pouch. Inside sat 3 spirit ascension pills, an issue longsword, and my own stock, 20 chi gathering pills and 107 spirit stones. Not much and not little, enough to cultivate quietly a while. As I made to go down, a voice came behind me, junior brother Yuke, and I turned. Mangi stood at the foot of the steps grinning with a food box. He said I had surely not eaten and had brought a hot meal from the canteen. On him, no need to be polite. I looked at his eager face and did not move, and asked whether he had watched me all morning. His smile stiffened, then blazed brighter, insisting I joked, that he only happened by. He held out the box and asked, by the way, what spell I had chosen, that his junior brother let him see. I did not take the box. I walked down, and passing him said, one thing, that he had overstepped. Back at 91 I weighed it. Mang Ji was an information broker, and someone was very interested in me. Then I stopped weighing it. Water comes and earth blocks it, and I would meet what came. I too had a background, and who does not know how to borrow another's authority? A knock came again, and my brush dropped a blot of ink. Today this yard was livelier than my old home in the city. I went to the gate, the moonlight through the crack mostly blocked by a tall, slender figure, and pulled it open. A youth stood there, though youth was not quite right, no more than 16 or 17 yet already over 6 feet, in the same green and white outer robe I wore, and yet on him it carried the air of a noble young master. A plain white silk belt cinched his waist. A long sword rode his back, its aqua tassel swaying in the night wind. His features were exceptional. Sword brows to the temples, a straight nose, a face fair as jade, and yet his eyes held no aggression, only a mild, steady calm, like a scholar stepping out to admire the moon. I looked him over twice and asked who he was. He bowed slightly, composed, and named himself Lord Jadesword, my neighbor from Courtyard 92, then straightened with a clean, bright smile. He had heard a visitor at my yard earlier and not wished to disturb, and thought them gone now, so came to pay respects, begging pardon for the sudden call. I leaned in the doorframe, not stepping aside. Lord Jadesword, a name or a title? I asked if he too was a new recruit. Yes, he said. Joined a few days before me, but with the recent villa reassignments only just moved into 92, so he came to introduce himself. I glanced at his waist. No extra copper pendants like Ryu Wool's inspector badge. His aura steady and reigned. The 5th layer of chi refinement. Not yet 12, the 5th layer, on a medium roots foundation, not the absolute top among outer disciples, but firmly the first tier. Still, I was no worse, having reached the innate stage at 7.5 and the fourth layer by 10, my speed lightning. I stepped aside a little and gave my name and asked him in. He cupped his hands and thanked me, stepped in with measured pace, and stopped after only 3 paces. He said it was late and he should not overstay, that a few words in the yard would do. I raised a brow. This one kept the rules. A late call, no entering the house, no prying. Keeping his distance, either truly well raised or very good at faking it. He asked, casual, whether I was from the city, and I said yes. He was from the Yu family of the Eastern region. The Eastern region. Noe-un had named several golden core families of it on the boat. The Zhou, the Yu, the Sim, and the Rim. The Yu ranked second, having produced 2 golden core family come to be an outer disciple. I did not ask, since one does not pry into another's family. We spoke a while of trifles, which market shop had the best spirit rice, the outer disciples' daily schedule, the seasonal exams and their grading. He spoke unhurried and clear, answering exactly what was asked with no extra word. And when I did not reply, he took no offense, only stood quiet. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, he ended it himself, saying it was late and he would not disturb my rest. He stepped back and bowed with cupped hands, offering that if I ever needed help, I should knock at 92, and left at the same unhurried pace, closing the gate behind him. I stood listening to his steps fade. A gentleman. I shook my head. A total weirdo, knocking late, leaving right after his name, as if dropping a calling card. What was the point? Making friends. I thought 3 seconds and could not say, and let it go, sat back at the table, wiped the blot, and buried myself in the 5 fire arts. Whatever his background or motive, the one thing that mattered now was cultivation. The next dawn I stood under the osmanthus, my issue sword drawn, its blade cold in the morning light. I raised my arms slow, in no hurry to move, my eyes shut, all my mind on the meeting of palm and hilt. The chill seeped up my arm to my shoulder and down into my dantian. Sword intent prototype, comprehended under the old locust at 7. 3 years now, still at the prototype stage, slow. But slow was not none. I opened my eyes and struck a vertical slash, the blade humming low, and a thin twig at the base of the osmanthus fell silent, the cut smooth and neat. I changed angle, a sweep, a diagonal, a reverse thrust, every strike without spiritual power, guided by intent alone. The moves of the 13 swords were long in my muscle, and what I trained now was not the moves, but the intent. The prototype was seeing the reason for the sword, and minor achievement was that reason merging into every strike, the step between called the unity of knowing and doing. I sheathed and stood, panting a little, still short, and the missing bit was not comprehension or repetition. I lacked an opportunity. Just then a voice came over the wall, praising the sword intent, and I snapped around. Lord Jade's sword stood on the path outside, a sword with an aqua tassel in hand. Frozen, his face open with surprise, he marveled that I was truly gifted, that the purity of this prototype was near minor achievement. My mouth twitched, and I called him Senior Brother Yu, and asked how long he had stood there watching. He froze, then looked embarrassed, the 11-year-old's ears going red, flustered, apologizing that he too had been at morning drills and sensing the sword intent as he passed, had stopped without thinking. He bowed, formal, and said he had overstepped. I stared 2 seconds. He did not seem to be acting, the fluster too natural to fake. It made sense for a 5th layer cultivator to feel sword intent next door and come curious. Still, I noted it and listed a to-do in my mind, to buy a defensive formation plate. No matter, I said, sheathing, just knock next time. He straightened, the embarrassment not gone, but his mild eyes lit, and admitted honestly that he was obsessed with the sword. He drew a silk manuscript from his pouch and offered it two-handed, a spell he had chosen from his family's own pavilion, called Will Severing God. It was a rare thing whose power depended wholly on the strength of one's sword intent. Would his family not hunt me? I asked, not daring to take it. He said no one in the Yu family would move against me, and to take it freely, confident. I gave him a deep look, so confident he was likely not the main line but not far from it. I took the manuscript and turned to the first page, and a few lines caught me. Sword intent prototype, power like a lower chi refinement spell. Major achievement, like a lower foundation establishment 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 spell. Major achievement, like a lower foundation cultivation establishment spell. Major achievement, like a lower found. I read on. Well, severing God had one requirement, to possess sword intent, and for one without it the manuscript was waste paper. Its ceiling was extreme and its threshold as high. Those who could cultivate sword intent and chi refinement were as rare as phoenix plumes, not 1 in 100 outer disciples bearing even a prototype. I closed it and looked up at him, the gift heavy, and asked what he wanted in exchange. He smiled and came to the point. 2 things. First, an apology for it had been rude to watch me practice. Second, he paused. Graver, he had cultivated sword intent 2 years and still could not touch the prototype, and my grasp of it was surely unique, and he would ask my guidance. An 11-year-old over 6 feet bowing to a 10-year-old of 5.5 for guidance, and the sword made a somewhat comic scene, but I did not laugh. This kind of interruption was fine, even a few more times. I flipped to the last page and confirmed the manuscript whole, no missing sheets, and said deal, pouching will, severing God, but not today, another day, for I had things to do. He straightened, cupped his hands, and said he would await my convenience, then turned and walked off unhurried. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed at the Biolac sect. My days broke into fixed blocks, dawn for the sword, morning into midday for the 5 fire arts theory, afternoon for the blazing flame formula toward the 5th layer. Evening was for alchemy and night for rest, unshaken rain or shine. The white entry diligence was plain, but its willpower saw me never miss a day of that hard schedule. In cultivation, I neared perfection at the 4th layer. The root upgrades boost was large, but the gap from the 4th layer to the 5th ran wider than any before, and at my pace another 3 months would reach the threshold. No rush. I had digested the 5 fire arts theory, its steps and cautions carved in, but between theory and practice lay a chasm. I had not one demon fire seed. Crimson flame insect fire showed at the Biolac market now and then. 300 to 500 stones. I could afford it, but the scroll set the 6th layer as the floor, and I was at the 4th. Too short. I would push my cultivation first, at least to the 5th, before trying. As for will severing God, I leaned back and rubbed my temples. The spell truly demanded comprehension. Half a year of study, even trying to channel sword intent into its frame at morning drills, and I stayed a breath away. Its entry was to fuse sword intent with divine thought and condense a strike on the mental plane. Simple to say and brutal to do. Sword intent was a thing on the order of a concept, deep and mysterious. Divine thought was an extension of mental energy, as invisible. To knead 2 invisible things into a concrete attack was no different from asking a blind man to thread a needle. Extraordinary savvy doubled my comprehension, but doubling needs a direction first, and without one, 0 times 2 is still 0. I set it aside to conquer once my sword intent progressed. In those 6 months I sat 2 quarterly exams. The first I lost. My opponent, a 12-year-old 4th layer girl with a wood root using the wood spike technique, a low spell. I took 3 spikes on stepping out, and though bronze skin and iron bones held, the referee ruled me passive with no effective counter and named me the loser. I could have won, for with an issue sword and my sword intent prototype, I could have shattered the spikes at range and dropped a 4th layer with ease. But after the 3 spikes I chose to concede. The second exam I won, an 11-year-old 4th layer with a low earth root who had not even drilled his spells. I took him in 3 moves, 1 win, 1 loss. Neither high nor low, just clearing the pass line, exactly my intent. I had read the exam rules that winning brought no extra reward and only surface shine, and I cared nothing for empty fame. A middling level meant not standing out and drawing no trouble, and once my cultivation and cards were ready I would rise in 1 leap. The lessons of the city held in the sect too. Nor had I forgotten alchemy. The 3 issued spirit ascension pills were long gone, so I had the family buy dozens of sets of chi gathering materials and ran my furnace in the yard, the rate steady at half. With guaranteed as a net, 10 sets gave at least 6 batches, some entrusted to my grandfather for the shop and some kept. As for spirit ascension pills, I was in no rush. A set of materials costing 10 stones against a pill's 8, too dear, so I would wait for a fatter purse. Besides, my chi gathering pills ran so pure, near free of pill toxin. They fell only a layer or 2 short of the sect's spirit ascension pills. The shop held steady, my father fronting as its alchemist. The Biolac market held 100 times the city's cultivators, so demand was huge and the competition fierce. Yet my pills ran a grade above the market, and by word of mouth drew a base of regulars, a net near 300 stones a month. Not much, but enough. My grandfather wrote that he and my father and uncle were firmly footed, and so Yun's cultivation had reached the 3rd layer of the postnatal realm and pushed for the 4th. I wrote back short, all as usual. Do not worry. One evening I finished a round and stretched in the yard, and a familiar tap came, not on the door but on the formation plate. Half a year back I had spent 120 stones adding a first-rank low-grade defensive formation to the walls. Since then, most fluctuations and sound within stayed shielded, so Lord Jade's sword would never again accidentally sense my sword intent. I pressed the plate and the gate opened. He stood outside, gentle as jade, taller by half a year, a shade over 6 feet. He wore green and white with a white brocade belt, a long sword on his back, its tassel now a darker new one. He apologized for the intrusion, and I nodded him in. Over the 6 months, his visits had risen from weekly to every third day and lately near daily, for one reason, sword intent. 2 months back, under my guidance, he had at last cracked the 2-year bottleneck and stepped into the prototype. Since then, he came more nominally to discuss the Tao, but really to pester me over every detail. He wanted the ratio of spiritual power to concept in the swing, the spread of mental energy at the strike, down to the last hair. I was annoyed at first, then saw the discussion serve me too, his sword foundation extremely solid. He practiced the mystic water sword art, a soft water path opposite my fierce fire route, and when 2 systems clashed they threw off sparks. More than once, arguing a sword angle with him, a flash would deepen my own grasp of the intent. The gain was mutual. I poured myself water and none for him, having learned his temper, a true gentleman who ate and drank nothing free and always brought his own tea and cakes. Sure enough, he set out a little pot and 2 osmanthus cakes. He said that trying to fold sword intent into the 7th form at drill today, he felt something wrong, the intent scattering as the sword reached its middle. I sipped and said the 7th was a transition, the momentum of the first 6 changing direction there. His trouble was not the 7th, but that the intent was not locked at the close of the 6th. He frowned, tracing the path on the table, and said his water power naturally spiraled at the 6th's end, and the sword intent followed it in an arc. That was exactly it. I cut in. That sword intent is not spiritual power. That power must run an arc but intent a straight line. By syncing them, when the 7th began, the intent followed the power around the bend and scattered. His fingers stopped and held a long moment. Then he slammed the table, crying that was it, and the osmanthus cakes jumped. I snatched mine back and told him he cracked the table every time he got excited. He pulled his hand back, apologetic, then rose, drew his sword, and ran the 6th into the 7th by my points, the water blue light arcing in the dusk. The power spiraled at the 6th's end, while he pinned the intent straight, the 2 merging at the 7th start, the light suddenly brightening. It worked, he said, sheathing that he had finally done it, then coughed an apology for losing composure. Quick to apologize and slow to change, I said, and rolled my eyes. He left excited, and I closed the gate, shaking my head at such a sword fanatic, straightened the leg he had loosened, and went on with my own work. The day settled quiet again. Cultivation, alchemy, the sword, a 3-point line, dull but effective. My cultivation piled steady at the 4th layer's peak, the power in my Dantean firming, wanting only a spark to break the barrier. This day the medicinal pill hall held its class, the hall I had chosen half a year back, for me the only choice. It sat in the West Peak Valley, a great stone palace wreathed year-round in pill scent, and by my arrival more than half the disciples were seated. I took the back row by the window from long habit, a good view, quiet, no one bothering me, and scenery if the lecture dragged. Soon a stern old man with white whiskers took the podium, gray-robed and plain, yet the spiritual power hidden in him ran deep as the sea. He was none other than the Alchemy Hall's outer sect elder, Master Eam, said to have long reached foundation establishment, though at what layer none knew. Master Eam lived up to his stern name, despising the lazy and prizing the ambitious with real learning. Today, he said, we would work the heat of the first-grade chi-gathering pill, that 1,000 lectures beat not one doing. We were to open our furnaces and refine a batch of true chi pills while he patrolled. A clatter rose as disciples took out furnaces and materials and lit fires, most on the unranked true chi pill, only a few daring the chi gathering. I took out my furnace unhurried and laid 10 sets of chi gathering materials in a row, then closed my eyes to rest, and set my state to its best. A moment later I opened them, a wisp of flame at my fingertip cast into the furnace. I worked the warming, purification, fusion, and forming in one flowing set with no hesitation, my face focused. All around me nothing to do with me. An hour on, the furnace chimed soft. I sealed and the lid popped, and 6 round chi gathering pills the size of longan lay at the bottom, the scent overflowing. Nearby disciples, still fighting their heat, smelled it and cast envious looks, murmuring that senior brother Yuke had succeeded again. They still purified the first set while I had a batch done, and how infuriating to compare. I paid them no mind and gathered the pills, and as I made to start the second batch, Master Eom stood at my table, arrived unnoticed. Expressionless, he took a pill, sniffed it, scraped a little powder with a nail, and rubbed it, and pronounced the body round, the color even, the fragrance restrained, the impurities under 0.5%. Then he looked at me and asked my success rate for chi-gathering pills. I stood and answered respectfully, about 60%. A collective gasp went round. For an ordinary outer disciple with 10% counted talented, and 60, what monster was this? Master Eom nodded approving and said my foundation was already solid past compare, and that chi gathering pills held little more meaning for me. Then he dropped a bomb that I might advance to a tier 1 medium grade alchemist. If I could refine the Spirit Ascension pill, at every quarterly assessment I could take Alchemy Hall tasks straight and never suffer to the death on the Marshall field. My heart stirred. This was exactly what I wanted. I raised my head, met his gaze, and said steadily that there was no time like the present. I had the materials ready and would ask him to witness it. I drew 10 oil paper sets from my pouch and stacked them neat, each a set for the Spirit Ascension pill. The hall went silent enough to hear a needle drop, every eye on the back row window. A show today. 10 sets of Spirit Ascension materials, a tier 1 medium grade pill, 10 stones a set, 100 in all, a huge sum to these disciples. And this boy laid them out for an on-the-spot test. Master Eom looked at the sets, his face shifting. After a silence, he said the rule for promotion was to refine a batch of Spirit Ascension pills within 10 sets, and asked whether I had seen the formula. I answered that I had long memorized the formula in the Alchemy Hall handbook, which held the assessment pills others wanting contribution points to exchange. Good, he said, stepping back to clear space. Rest a quarter hour and begin. I sat and closed my eyes on the surface, steadying my breath. In truth, sunk into the panel. Guaranteed one sure success in 10 refinings. It was my greatest confidence today. In my own yard, I had secretly refined the Spirit Ascension pill 9 times. All failed, each failure banking experience and pushing the guaranteed counter to its edge. This 10th was a sure success. A quarter hour on, I opened clear, bright eyes, took a set without hesitation, and cast it into the furnace, the flame flaring, every breath in the hall seeming to stop. The Spirit Ascension pill ran several times harder than the key gathering, its purification wanting 3 levels of heat, each ingredient's order and timing precise to the breath. My fingers tapped the furnace steady as a machine, my focus absolute. Purification done, fusion begun. The hardest step, 37 medicinal liquids to fuse in a set order and ratio within 10 breaths. The least error a blast. Sweat beaded my brow, but my hands held like rock, and at the last instant before all fused, the power in the furnace shook wrong. A failure flashed through many minds, but as the tremor rose to break, a flash of inspiration came. Guaranteed triggered. I seized it, willed it to condense, and slammed both hands to the furnace. It shook hard, then calmed, a thick inseparable fragrance pouring from the lid to fill the hall. Done. I let out a breath and worked the gathering seal. The lid opened, and 6 crimson pills with faint cloud patterns lay at the bottom, 6 in one batch, every one top tier. Hisses of drawn breath rose and fell. Success on the first try, and 6 in a batch. Was this a thing a 10-year-old outer disciple could do? Master Eom lunged to the table, dropping his elder's poise, and reached straight into the hot furnace for a pill, turning it over and over. His face went from shock to disbelief to pure ecstasy, and he said good, 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 his beard trembling. He turned sharp to me, eyes fixed as on a peerless rough jade, and called my name. I answered, and he asked whether I would take him as my master. The hall was stunned, for Master Eom was famed for sky-high standards, and had never taken a disciple, and now begged a half-year newcomer to be his apprentice. I was delighted too, the very sentence I had waited for, and without hesitation bowed the full salute, my voice ringing, greeting my master. One can never have too many backers. Good, good disciple, rise, he said. His eternal ice melted into a smile like a blooming old chrysanthemum, and helped me up himself. He grew more pleased the longer he looked. A 10-year-old at the 4th layer, a tier 1 medium alchemist steady in nature and gifted past compare, a seedling born for alchemy. He dismissed the class on the spot. The disciples, pardoned yet reluctant, had just watched a prodigy born and Master Eom take his first disciple in 10 years, enough to boast of for months. They came to greet me on the way out, calling congratulations, asking me to look after them, one naming himself Jang Sam and offering legwork any time. I answered with polite nods, neither close nor distant, knowing they valued not me but my new title as Master Eom's disciple. Once they scattered, Master Eom took me to a quiet room behind the hall, his private refining room, sat me on a mat, and got straight to it. Since I had taken him as master, he said he could not be without a gesture. He drew a yellowed bee-skin booklet from his pouch and tossed it to me. An alchemy secret technique got by chance in his early years. Divided mind furnace control. A first meeting gift. I opened it and my heart jolted, for as its name said, it let one do 2 things at once, tending 2 furnaces together, a divine skill for an alchemist, doubling my efficiency if mastered. My breath went ragged as I read. I saw every page marked with cinnabar notes in a vigorous hand, plainly his own, his experiences and tricks laid plain. Not just a technique, but a whole legacy. I closed it and bowed again, thanking him, the gift too heavy. No need for such show, he said, waving, that its demand on divine thought ran extreme, and my cultivation was still shallow. So just read it now, he said, not rushing lest I harm my divine soul's foundation. I said I understood. Good, he went on. From today I was Eom's personal disciple, to leave the outer sex trifles and mind-only cultivation and alchemy. I would keep drawing the sex monthly allowance and take 100 more contribution points a month from him, exchanging anything I lacked at the treasury myself. My heart warmed again. 100 points equal to 100 stones. This master truly treating me as his own. He told me to go familiarize myself with the theory and return in 3 days for his guidance. I said yes, pouched the technique, and withdrew, going straight home without lingering. His appearance was an unexpected gift, giving my plans a better line, a foundation establishment elder as backer easing everything in the outer sect. And more, there was that divided mind furnace control, which I sensed would be a great asset on my alchemy road. Back at 91, I raised the defensive formation, cutting off all probes, and spread the beast skin booklet impatient. Its principle was to split a cultivator's divine thought in two, forming 2 independent cores to tend 2 furnaces at once. Simple in theory, it ran beyond imagination in practice, like asking a man to draw a circle with one hand and a square with the other, both perfect. Master Eom had marked several key nodes in vermilion. First, divine thought leaves the body to sense the world. Second, it turns to threads for fine control. Third, it splits to do 2 tasks at once, each step with detailed method and caution. My eyes fell on the words divine thought. I thought of my panel. Mental realm, mortal medium grade, the most special thing about me since crossing over besides the entry system. My divine thought ran far stronger than my ranks. An extraordinary savvy doubled my grasp. Where others would see an unreadable heavenly book, many obstacles cleared for me after a little thought, and his notes cleared the last. The sky darkened unnoticed. I closed the booklet and breathed out. The whole theory of divided mind furnace control mastered. The demand on divine thought was extreme, and I closed my eyes and tried to cast my divine thought out of my body by the method. At first it was blurred, like the world through frosted glass, but as I pressed on the glass cleared, I saw the osmanthus in the yard, the patterns on its leaves. Even an ant-crawling one saw the roof tiles and a blade of withered grass in the gaps, a feeling novel and strong. Divine thought out of the body. Done. I went on to the second step, turning it to threads, condensing the cast divine thought to an invisible line, and reaching cautiously for the teacup on the table. The thread brushed the rim, and the cup did not budge. I pressed harder, and still it did not move. I frowned. My divine thought was strong enough, but my control's precision was far short, like a strong man set to fine embroidery, unable to place his strength. This second step was the true difficulty. It seemed I needed something to practice on, and my eye fell on the issue longsword, and a bold thought came. What if I folded the thread method into my sword work, using divine thought to harness sword intent? Once it came, it could not be pushed down. As I moved to draw and try, a tap came at the formation plate Lord Jade's sword signal, and I composed myself and opened the gate. He held a pot of tea and 2 cakes, saying he had heard of the alchemy hall today and offering congratulations. Sincere. I let him in and asked, casual, whether the news spread so fast. He said Master Eom taking a disciple was a thing rare in 10 years, so by now the whole outer sect knew 91 had bred an extraordinary alchemy genius. I stayed non-committal, then looked at him and asked whether his Yu family had any method for training divine thought. His hand on the cup paused. He looked at me twice, set it down, and asked whether I truly thought his Yu family had become my home. It was not out of the question, I said, spreading my hands. He choked, nearly spitting the tea, coughed, wiped his mouth, his composure cracking a moment, and said my skin was thicker than bronze. Skin and iron bones. I did not deny it. He leaned back, fingers tapping slow, calculating, and after a long while said he did have a technique for divine thought in hand. My back straightened. It was called the spirit refining technique, he said, a remnant from his family's old vault. Only 3 levels. After all 3, one's mental energy could push from the mortal realm to the low-grade spirit realm. The mortal realm answers to chi refinement and the spirit realm to foundation establishment. Pushing mental energy to the low spirit realm in the chi refinement stage meant crossing a whole realm on the level of divine thought. But there was a drawback, he said. Grave. The process extremely painful. Not of flesh, but a tearing at the level of the divine soul. Its demand on willpower abnormal. Of 3 Yu direct descendants who tried it, 2 quit halfway and 1 went astray, wrecking his divine soul and taking half a year to mend. I ran it fast in my mind. Pain. Willpower. On my panel hung the white entry diligence, its effect crude and simple. Willpower up. And what others could not bear I might. Whatever your terms, I said, name them. He set down the cup, stretched his long legs, and shifted comfortable, his face turning graver, a touch shrewder. He wanted me to refine spirit ascension pills for him. 10 sets of materials a month his to provide, and I to return at least 15 spirit ascension pills each month. My brow furrowed. 10 sets, 15 pills. What was my spirit ascension rate now? On the surface none knew, since I succeeded in one go, but in truth 10%, today's batch saved by guaranteed, without which I could not have made even one. 10 sets, by guaranteed, would trigger once for 6 pills, the other 9 batches pure luck. At a 10% base, on average and with fortune, maybe one more batch, 5 or 6 pills, 11 or 12 in all, 3 or 4 short of 15. But my thought turned quick. If I got the spirit refining technique and lifted my mental energy to high-grade mortal or beyond, I would have the base for divided mind furnace control. Once that reached entry, my heat control and fusion precision would climb a level, even letting me run 2 furnaces, and my cultivation neared the 5th layer, past which fuller power and finer control would lift the base rate at least 20 points. And there were the 5 fire arts. The scroll set the 6th layer as the floor for refining demon fire, but with bronze skin and iron bones and resilience far past my peers. Forcing it at the 5th was not impossible. If I refined the crimson flame insect fire, my alchemy flame would jump a grade in heat, purity, and control, lifting the spirit ascension rate another 20 or 30, 10% becoming 40 or 50, 15 pills from 10 sets. Possible. I ran it all in under 5 breaths and said deal. He had not expected such speed and paused, asking whether I would not counteroffer, and I said the price was fair, nothing to haggle. His lips moved, then he shook his head, drew a yellowed silk scroll from his pouch, and pushed it over. The spirit refining technique remnant, 3 levels whole, to copy and return the original tomorrow. I took it, light in hand, its corners worn and clearly old. By the way, he added, no rush on the pills. He had just finished a batch this month, so improve my own cultivation and mental energy first, and begin handing over next month. He paused and added that he was now at the 5th layer's peak, and once he broke to the 7th, the deal would end and he would trouble me no more. I pouched the scroll and said, the 5th layer's peak, and he said something like that. I said then I would take this business at 2.5 years at most. He rose, cupped his hands, and said a pleasure doing business. And I said the same. Watching him go, I closed the door and sat to order my next steps, not yet reading the scroll. Copy and study the spirit refining technique. Cultivate its first level to push mental energy to high mortal. Then start divided mind furnace control. Then break to the 5th layer, then buy and refine the crimson flame insect fire. 5 things interlinked, each paving the next, the order not to be jumbled. I drew a breath and unrolled the spirit refining technique, its text plain and ancient, no decoration. The first level's core was 1 line, to use intent as a blade to tear the divine soul apart, then mend it with spiritual power, tempering it again and again. Tearing the divine soul apart. I read the words twice, and no wonder he called it painful. The method was to rip a hole in one's own mental energy and stitch it with spiritual power. Then tear again after stitching, stitch again after tearing. With each mending, the divine soul grew a little tougher. The same principle as the body tempering I did as a child. I smashed my fists on iron sand, let them grow back and smashed again. Only smashing fists hurt, and a torn divine soul would likely hurt 100 times more. I closed the scroll without long hesitation. Early next morning, I went to the market and bought a bottle of high-grade rank 1 soul-nourishing pills at the apothecary. 10 to a pack at 50 stones each, 500 for the bottle. It was a specific medicine for divine soul damage and an essential for the spirit refining technique. The scroll was clear that after each self-tearing one must take a soul-nourishing pill to aid the mending, or the piled damage would harm the foundation. 500 stones, no regret, for money that should be spent cannot be saved. I stepped next door to the demon material shop and asked the price of crimson flame insect fire. 450 for one. 500 for the good, said the lean middle-aged shopkeeper. A fresh batch of fine quality. Did I want one? I looked at the fire seeds in the counter, each in a special jade bottle, only a fingernail large with a faint red glow. Save me the best, I said. I would collect it in half a month. Deal, he said. The deposit 100, and I slapped down 100 stones and turned back to 91. For the next half month, I went nowhere. My schedule remade. Dawn for the sword, morning into midday for the spirit refining technique, afternoon for the blazing flame formula toward perfection. Evening was for alchemy, night for the theory of divided mind furnace control and the 5 fire arts. The spirit refining technique began in earnest on the 3rd day. I sat cross-legged, swallowed a soul-nourishing pill, and by the method drew my divine thought in, condensed it to a sphere, and then tore. A sharp, piercing pain burst from the depths of my mind, not of flesh but of consciousness itself splitting. It was as if an unseen blade followed the grain of my thoughts and clove them down the middle. My body arched, veins bulging at my brow, teeth grinding, pain, too much. Physical injury I could ride out with bronze skin and iron bones to cushion it, but this was a wound to the divine soul. Bronze skin and iron bones could do nothing inside my head, at least the green entry could not, but diligence could. Its willpower took hold, and the urge to stop, just risen, was crushed. Gritting my teeth, I guided spiritual power to the crack and began to mend, the first repair taking 2 full hours. When I crawled off the bed, I was soaked in sweat, my hands shaking. The second day I went on, the third the same. By the 7th, I could tear and mend in half an hour. By the 10th and a quarter, the soul-nourishing pills going 1 a day. By the 15th, I sat and finished the 15th tearing and mending. As my power circled and my divine soul fused, a subtle tremor came from the depths of my mind, as of something shattering and something reconnecting at once. I opened my eyes sharp. My perception more than doubled in an instant. How many leaves on the osmanthus? 3,721. Someone passed on the path outside, and the rhythm of the steps was Ryu Wool's. Mortal Realm High Grade, the spirit refining technique's first level complete. I breathed out and my muscles loosed. 15 days, 1 bottle of soul nourishing pills, for a small lift in my mental realm. Worth it. I did not pause to celebrate. For almost at the same instant the technique broke through. The power long gathering in my dantian began to churn. The leap in mental energy resonating in my spiritual power. The membrane stuck so long at the 4th layer's peak turned fragile and clear under the double strike, just short of a breath. I did not hesitate, fished a chi-gathering pill, swallowed it, and drove the blazing flame formula full force, my power racing the meridians 1 cycle, 2, 3, and the barrier shattered. Spiritual chi poured in, my power surged. The 5th layer of chi refinement. I sat feeling the earth-shaking change, the power in my dantian near twice as thick, its flow much faster. Then I stretched and rose, rested most of the day, and ate a full meal before going to the shop. The shopkeeper saw me and took out a fist-sized jade bottle from behind the counter. The best quality saved, 500 less the 100 deposit, another 400 to pay. I slapped the stones down and took the bottle, slightly worn, and through the translucent wall saw a fingernail of crimson flame flickering slow within. Crimson flame insect fire. I pouched it and returned to 91, shut and locked the door, raised the formation, sat and set the bottle before me, its light flickering on my face. The scroll said the 6th layer and above, and I stood at the 5th, 1 short. But I had bronze skin and iron bones, a medium root, my meridians far tougher than my rank, able to bear a backlash. I had mortal high-grade mental energy, divine thought strong enough to wrap the seed so it would not slip. I had extraordinary savvy, comprehension doubled, the theory long by heart, every step in caution carved. I closed my eyes and ran the process 3 full times, then opened them and pulled the stopper. A scorching aura rushed my face, the crimson flame insect fire breaking free, the flame leaping like a startled little beast. At the same instant, my divine thought probed out and turned to a thin shield, wrapping the seed. 5 fire arts. First step, wrap the seed with divine thought. The seed struggled twice in the shield, its heat surging, and even through the divine thought my mental energy burned with a sharp pain. But against the agony of tearing my divine soul, this heat sat well within my range. Second step, use spiritual power as a bridge to guide the fire in. I lifted a finger, a wisp of power reaching out to touch the flame, and by its traction the seed drew slow toward my palm. Third step, absorb it into the dantian sea of fire. I breathed deep, flipped my palm, and pressed the seed to my dantian, and the heat drove through cloth and skin and muscle straight along my meridians to the dantian. My body stiffened hard, as if a red-hot wire had been poured into my channels, burning from palm to dantian. Bronze skin and iron bones were pushed to the limit, the meridian walls clacking faint but not breaking. I held. The seed rushed into my dantian with its last will to resist, thrashing in the sea of power, sweat seeping at my brow, but my hands steady. My divine thought turned to threads, tracking its every move and forcing it bit by bit into the center of the sea of fire. 1 day, 2, 3. On the 3rd evening, the last resistance of the crimson flame insect fire wholly dissolved, and the seed became a quiet little crimson flame coiled obedient in the center, mirroring my spiritual root fire. I opened my eyes, raised my right hand, and a wisp of flame flickered at my fingertip. Its color had turned from my root fire's orange-yellow to crimson-red, its heat near doubled, its purity beyond compare with before. I stared, 2 breaths, my mouth curling on its own. I rose to the table, where the furnace sat and 3 more sets of spirit ascension materials waited in my pouch. I pulled the furnace close and cast the crimson flame in. The wall licked to a pleasant hum. I purified the first herbs, and the crimson flame insect fire's heat and control far outran my root fire. The impurities stripped fast under precise heat, purification 30% quicker and a level finer. Fusion, 37 liquids converging, the old trouble points now perfectly coordinated by power and flame. The liquids merging smooth without a stir. Forming, and the lid popped on 5 Crimson Spirit Ascension pills. The fragrance rich, the quality excellent, the bodies translucent, the cloud patterns clearer than the batch by root fire. I did not thrill, only put them away and cast in the second set. Second furnace, success. 6 pills. Third, success. 5. All 3 furnaces done, 16 pills, a rate of 100%. The sample was too small to mean my true level, but I could feel that with the Crimson Flame Insect Fire my Spirit Ascension rate ran at least half. With guaranteed as a net I could clear 6 or 7 furnaces in 10, 5 or 6 pills each, more than a 30 from 10 sets. Lord Jade Sword's 15, more than enough. I pouched the furnace and stretched my stiff neck. 3 days refining the demon fire in 3 furnaces straight, and though bronze skin and iron bones held the body, the mental drain was real. I needed a good night's rest. Tomorrow I would take in the goods, and tell him some good news besides, that in future he could prepare more materials. Just as I lay down, the defensive plate at the gate suddenly shook, not Lord Jadesword's rhythm, but a strange urgent knocking, and a voice forced through the shielding. Junior Brother Yuke, urgent from the affairs hall, all outer disciples to the martial field at once. The sect had issued a temporary mission. My brows drew together. I rolled up, fished my disciple token from beside the pillow, and found it steeped in dark red light, the sect's brand on its face flickering like a warning. In half a year it had never glowed red. I flipped it and small characters showed on the back. Emergency assembly, the martial field, no time to lose. The messenger's steps already fading as they roused every house. Without much thought I threw on my outer robe, hung my pouch, and pushed the door, the night wind rushing in on the last of the osmanthus. The gate of 92 opened almost together, and Lord Jadesword came out in green and white, a long sword at his side, its tassel swaying. We traded a look across the path, and he asked whether I had received it too, and I raised my red glowing token. He nodded, pouched his, and stepped forward, and one after the other we took the path toward the martial field. In the night, disciples in outer uniforms converged from all sides like streams into one river, footfalls rising and falling. A red emergency summons, he said, his pace a touch quicker. What did it mean? I asked. White was routine and yellow a quarterly reminder, he said, and red, he paused, by his information, was generally for major sect-level events. I said nothing, my mind working fast. A sect-level event, yet gathering outer disciples, when a beast tide or a clash of sects would need no small fry of the chi refinement stage. Then only one thing was left, a mission tied directly to the outer disciples. Thinking it, I remembered something, told him to wait, and drew a sealed jade bottle from my pouch and handed it over. He took it, uncorked it, sniffed, and his pupils shrank. Spirit Ascension pill, he said. This month's 15. Count them. He tilted the bottle to his palm, the crimson pills rolling out round and smooth, the cloud patterns fine, the fragrance thick and lasting, and counted once. 15. Not one missing. Junior Brother Yuke, he said, and I asked what. So fast, he said. I said. This rate of mine? He said, pouching the bottle. He had thought 2 months to reach steady output, and I had enough in the first month. Just luck. I tossed out, and he did not press. Only said I was the most ridiculous alchemist he had ever seen, and to hurry so as not to be late. I ignored the remark and walked on. We joined the flow through a long bamboo path, and the view opened onto the martial field, the largest public ground of the outer sect. Thousands of feet of blue stone, spirit stone pillars lit the 4 corners bright as day. By our arrival, thousands stood dense in the field. Of the 8 or 10,000 outer disciples, at least 7 in 10 come. We took a spot on the crowd's edge, neither forward nor back, the platform clear without being seen. Disciples around us whispered in clusters, guessing at the summons, one wondering if it were a beast tide, another scoffing that a beast tide would need no notice to fodder like us. Another asked then what, and the answer came, who knows? Wait and see. I caught nothing useful and turned to the platform, empty, but in the passage behind it several figures waited, their power each more terrible than the last. Foundation establishment and more than one. Soon, 6 figures stepped up in turn, led by a burly, square-faced, middle-aged cultivator in dark gold robes with the mission hall crest at the chest, a cross sword and shield. Behind him, 5 lined up, the outer elders of the 6 halls, medicinal pill, artifact, formation, spirit plant, general affairs. All come. My gaze held a beat on the second. Master Eam, gray-robed and white-bearded and cold, hands in sleeves, unperturbed. I made no extra move, even tilting my face aside, not to stand out, for a fresh disciple greeting him before such a crowd would only ask for trouble. On the platform, Master Eam swept the field, and for a bare instant, less than half a breath, his gaze paused my way, then drew back as if nothing. A Foundation establishment alchemist with mental energy in the spirit realm. How could he not mark his own disciple? Not arrogant, not rash, steady, not bad. Faintly I sensed a thread of satisfaction from him, though I could not say from where, likely the sharper perception of my mental energy at high mortal. Disciples of all halls, silence, said the dark gold mission hall elder, his spiritual power-laden voice spreading over the field, and the talk ceased at once. He named himself the mission hall outer sect elder, Zhang Mian, and said he had summoned us because the sect had just issued a temporary mission. He paused, sweeping the crowd. A month ago, he said the Biolax sect had found a secret realm on the outskirts of Chang'an City in the eastern region. The field went quiet a breath, then exploded, cries of a secret realm, of Chang'an City, of what a secret realm even was. Some 30 or 40 asking that last at once. I said nothing. Chang'an City, the dusty little city, the spirit fields, the rundown Yuk courtyard, the western stone road I had walked countless times, all sprang to mind and I was slightly startled. On the platform, Zhang Mian raised a hand to press the noise down, and it ebbed. He would say 3 simple things, he said. First, a secret realm was an independent small world formed when fragments of other worlds fell into ours in ancient times. It had whole spatial barriers and its own spiritual chi cycle, holding perhaps heaven and earth treasures, demon beasts, even ancient legacies. Second, secret realms had ranks, and this one, inspected by inner elders, was confirmed to rank 1. Its danger answered roughly to the chi refinement stage, so for all of us opportunity and risk ran together. Third, he paused. Secret realms had opening limits, and this one would open on its own in 20 days, stay open 3 months, then close its next opening unknown. Registration began now, he said, drawing a jade slip of dense names from his sleeve to hover before him. For Mission Hall disciples it was mandatory, others voluntary though encouraged, and all who explored would earn contribution points. To register, infuse spiritual power into the token and pointed at the slip. At once people were pulling out tokens, and I looked at mine, the red light already faded to faint white. A secret realm, opportunities, treasures, ancient legacies, tempting to the ear, but I knew better. I was an alchemist, with many ways to earn stones short of fighting to the death, and I would not go. I pouched the token. Beside me, Lord Jadesword had already raised his, infused it, and pointed it at the slip. A white light flashing, registered. Not going, he asked, turning. I shook my head, saying there would be plenty of herbs and ores in a secret realm, but I could not get away from things here. He did not press. Friends though we were, he would not impose his will, for everyone walks his own path, and there is no need to force a shared road. Stay safe, I added. Do not worry, Lord Jadesword said, tucking his token back at his waist, the water blue tassel swaying. A rank 1 secret realm was a thing a 5th layer peak could handle with ease, and besides, as a sword cultivator, if he would not even dare a rank 1 secret realm, what face did he have to hold a sword? I did not answer. More and more disciples were signing on, the names on the jade slip climbing, and few chose to stay behind, for a secret realm was a thing one might not meet once in a life. But I stayed sober. The more everyone rushes forward, the more one must not move on impulse. Registration ran about a quarter hour, and Zhang Mian put the slip away and named the departure, 20 days on, at the Marshall Field in the morning. Then the 6 elders flew off to their halls. The crowd broke up, the talk 10 times louder than before. I slipped around the field by the side, Lord Jadesword following onto the bamboo path back. The secret realm was near my hometown, he remarked, and I did not stop, only hummed. And my family? He asked. In the market, I said, and he nodded and did not press. A little further on, I spoke of my own accord, asking what he needed to prepare before entering. He counted on his fingers, healing pills, detox pills, chi recovery pills, life-saving talismans, death substitution treasures, the whole lot, 1,000 stones at least. I had some detox and chi recovery pills in stock, I said, and would give him a few tomorrow. He tilted his head, the corner of his mouth curving faintly, and said I was truly interesting, my mouth harder than an iron door bolt, yet my deeds more righteous than anyone's. That was because he had given me the spirit refining technique and will-severing God. I said, so call it repayment. He smiled and said no more, and we parted at the bamboo fork. Back at 91, I shut the door, raised the formation, and looked up at a moon already drifting west, past midnight. Then I went in and sat at the table, divided mind furnace control. After dawn, I tidied the yard and sent Nasoso a talisman with a few words about the secret realm. I asked that the Na family cause no trouble, since no one could save them if they did. Then I bought 2 spirit rice dumplings at a market stall and ate them walking to the alchemy hall. It was no class day, but I was going to find Master Em first to resolve my doubts on divided mind furnace control and push my spirit ascension output higher. Lord Jadesword would be busy readying his supplies and unlikely to come pester me for sword talk. All the better, peace and quiet, and the West Peak Valley was no short walk. An hour on, I reached the pill-scented stone palace, its doors open and empty within. For outer disciples rarely came on off days, but for a few sorry souls like me who majored in alchemy. I rounded the main hall to an isolated stone house behind and knocked 3 times, and Master Eom told me to enter. The room was small and plain. A stone table, 2 mats, 3 furnaces of different sizes in the corner. He sat cross-legged with a cup of cold tea beside him, his gray robe wrinkled, and his white hair mussed, plainly wrung out too by last night's summons. I bowed. He told me to sit, sipped the cold tea, frowned, and set it down, then asked whether I had heard of last night's matter. I had, a rank 1 secret realm near Chang'an City. And my thoughts, he asked, and I said I was not going. He glanced at me and asked why. This disciple majored in alchemy, I said, and a secret realm's gains were low for me. My cultivation was still the 5th layer with no hidden cards, so entering an unknown space carried risk beyond reward. His brow eased. A good read, he said, and he did not recommend I go either. The good things in a rank 1 secret realm meant something only in the hands of a 6th layer or above. If I went now, I could not contend and would easily become a target. And besides, as a noble alchemist, why bother with the fighting and killing? I nodded, then changed the subject, saying I had come for guidance on divided mind furnace control. Had I not just gotten it a month ago? He asked. Had I even finished the theory? I had, I said, and had already achieved the first step, divine thought leaving the body, and was now on the second, turning it to threads, with a few points to ask. What did I say? He asked. This disciple was on the second step, I repeated. He stared at me 3 full breaths, his white brows knitting, and said, 1 month. Yes, I had mastered divine thought leaving the body in 1 month. He said, to be exact, I answered, half a month, the other half spent on the threads. The room went quiet a moment. He stood abruptly, knocking his mat askew, and demanded what realm my mental energy was. Mortal high grade, I said. His mouth opened and did not close for a long while. He circled me once, sat again, and laid a hand on my head. A wisp of Foundation Establishment divine sense, sweeping and light and quick before it withdrew. It really was mortal high grade, he said, letting go, his face shifting from shock to something hard to name. A 10-year-old, 5th layer, mortal high grade mental energy. I did not correct him that I had reached the 5th layer only recently, since such small things did not matter. Might this disciple keep referring to the notes from his own cultivation? I asked. He came back to himself and rubbed his temples and called me a brat, then sighed and pushed a furnace aside to clear space, telling me to show my thread transformation while he watched. I sat, steadied my breath, and probed my divine thought out to a thin thread. He was silent a few breaths, then said the precision was short and the force redundant, my divine thought too thick. He raised his right forefinger, and a thread no eye could see shot out to rest on the teacup, which rose, turned once in the air, and settled silent on the table. I carved his every move into my mind. Did I see the difference? He asked, withdrawing his thread. My thread was too thick, the contact wide, the force scattered. The secret of transformation lay in the word transform, not twisting it into a rope, but drawing a single thread from a bolt of cloth. I closed my eyes and, by his words, remade my divine thought, no longer contracting it to a strip, but stretching it thinner and thinner still. 3 breaths on, a near-transparent thread reached from my brow to the cup. It trembled, rose a fingernail's height, hovered less than half a breath, and fell. His eyelid twitched, and he asked whether I had learned it from one telling. I had not fully, I answered, opening my eyes, my strength gone after half a breath, and my precision far off. He drew a deep breath and sat up straight, and said my name, and I answered. Taking me as a student, he said, was the most correct thing he had ever done in his life. I saw no need to be modest. For the next hour, he worked only on the second step of divided mind furnace control, breaking down every point. He went from the thread's thickness to controlling objects of different materials to guiding 2 threads with both hands at once, holding nothing back. I practiced as I listened, and in that hands-on teaching extraordinary savvy showed its full strength, so that whenever he named a key point, I grasped the frame in 3 to 5 tries. By the last quarter hour, I could hover the cup steady 3 breaths and shift it an inch either way. His eye twitched at the sight, for his own first practice of this step had taken 3 months. Enough, he said, waving me off. No more today. The drain on divine thought was too great, and to go rest and continue tomorrow. I rose and bowed and thanked him. Go on, he said, leaning back, and added vaguely not to tell anyone I had entered the gate of divided mind furnace control in a month. This disciple understood. I left the stone house and walked back through the palace, where a supplementary notice on the secret realm hung on the main hall board. I stopped to read it, and there was little in it. The secret realm lay 30 miles southwest of Chang'an City in the eastern region, at Huksong Ridge. My steps paused at that name, Huksong Ridge. At 7.5, my father had taken me there to kill Jochiel's band of bandits, and the first man I ever killed had died in that place. I stared at the name 2 breaths, drew my gaze back, and stepped out of the hall. Coming down from the west peak, I saw a slim figure crouched by the bamboo fork with bottles and jars spread out, taking inventory, and looking closer it was Lord Jade's sword. A gray cloth lay on the ground, a dozen pill bottles, 3 talismans, a spare flying sword, 2 protective robes, a heap of odds and ends. Was he setting up a stall? I asked. He looked up with a wry smile and said he was checking his gear for the secret realm. I crouched beside him and scanned it and called him a rich man. Here at a fair price, just over cost, I said, and handed him several bottles of pills. He shook his head and laughed. No sense letting them go to waste, better than buying from the sect that profited off the war. So all right, he said. Long-term partner. We walked the bamboo path a while, and near the villas he asked, since Changdun City was my home, whether I knew the Huksong Ridge area. Familiar, I said, my pace unchanged. Anything to watch for? Terrain, demon beasts, high mountains and dense forest. I said heavy fog year-round and poor sight. A band of bandits once there but long cleared. As for demon beasts, when I left there were only unranked red-horned snakes and iron-backed apes. Nothing to fear. Then I paused. But a secret realm was a secret realm, I added, and might not match the true terrain of the ridge, and no one could say what waited inside. He nodded and said he had note of it. At the fork we parted, he for the market to buy gear, I back to 91. I raised the formation, sat, took out the furnace, and drew 5 sets of spirit ascension materials for making Lord Jade Sword's pills was a side task, and I fired the furnace daily anyway. Today's real aim was to test my stable spirit ascension rate with the Crimson Flame insect fire, since yesterday's 3 straight batches might have carried luck and the sample was thin. I flicked a wisp of Crimson Flame in, the wall humming as I fed the herbs, and worked purification, fusion, and forming. The first batch succeeded with 5 pills, the second with 6, the third failed, the fourth gave 4, and the fifth gave 5 before my power ran out. 4 of 5, 80%, and with guaranteed as a net, at least 9 and 10 across 10 batches. I could not run 10 at once, so the numbers might waver, but not far. An 80% base for a Tier 1 medium alchemist would knock Master EM off his cushion. The days after held to my plan without fail, the sword at dawn, the second level of the spirit refining technique in the forenoon. The afternoon went to the alchemy hall to consult Master EM on divided mind furnace control, and the evening to pills. The second level ran the same vein as the first, splitting the divine soul but deeper and wider. The pain more than doubled. The first level was a knife cutting a slit in the brain. The second was a hammer smashing a pit in it. I vomited twice in the first 3 days. Not of the body but a rejection at the divine soul level that showed as retching, ringing ears and whiting sight. By the 4th day I had adapted, taking soul pills at 1.5 a day. After the first bottle of 10, I had my grandfather buy 2 more from the market. 1,000 stones without a blink. The lift in mental energy came at once, and 10 days on it had climbed several steps past mortal high grade. Without the willpower behind me, I would have quit long ago. Divided mind furnace control quickened too, Master EM giving an hour a day to correct my threads and my divided mind refining. On the 20th day, he set 2 small furnaces in the stone house and had me light them at once. I sat between them, the left in my left hand and the right in my right. My divine thought split in 2, and both flames rose, matched in brightness and heat. I held it 10 breaths before the right flame shot up out of control, and I withdrew my hands, and it died. Not bad, he said from across the table. Only my right allocation was a touch short, my thought center leaning left by habit, a common flaw of right-handed cultivators. I had tried to split it evenly, I said, and could not hold past the 8th breath. No need for even, he said. 6 and 4 would do. 6 to the primary furnace and 4 to the secondary. While the primary was at a critical step, the secondary held a gentle heat and waited, the 2 alternating, not always in step. I was stunned to breath, for it was wholly unlike my understanding. I had thought divided mind furnace control meant both sides fully in step, a circle with the left hand and a square with the right at once. But he meant not to draw the square yet, to let the right hand pause, and once the left finished its circle, switch to the right. Alternating, I said. Yes, he said, tapping the table twice. The essence was not simultaneity, but switching. The divine thought jumping between furnaces. If fast enough, it looked simultaneous to others, while in truth the attention held one key point at a time. I understood at once, like a processor not truly running 2 programs, but switching fast enough to fake parallel work. I see, I said. Good, he said, rising. That was all for today. And to get my switching under 2 breaths within 10 days. Then try dual furnace true chi pills. Yes, I said, and rose to bow and go. But he called me to wait, and asked when I had refined that crimson flame insect fire. I had used it in refining, and a foundation establishment cultivator watching the change in my recent pills. would know at a glance the flame source had changed. "Half a month ago," I answered truly. "Refining a tier 1 demon flame at the 5th layer," he said. "My physique was special," I said. "My meridians tougher than my rank, and my mental energy enough to wrap the seed, so I tried it." He was silent a few breaths and said, "Quite bold." I did not answer. "In future, tell me first before such a thing," he said in earnest. "A failed demon flame refining would at best shatter my meridians, and at worst blow my body apart. And if I died under his name, where would he put his face?" "This disciple was wrong," I said, lowering my head. He huffed, put his hands behind his back, and turned for the house, and after a few steps dropped one more thing. The insect fire was too low to suppress tier 1 high pills or lift them much. Once I steadied at tier 1 medium, I should switch to a higher demon flame, or cultivate the 5 fire arts to minor achievement and refine a second tier 1 flame. The door closed. I noted it. The crimson flame insect fire matched an early chi refinement flame, and even so wanted the 6th layer normally. A higher demon flame met at least tier 1 high, whose price began at 3,000 stones and which money alone might not buy. And I likely could not refine it short of chi refinement perfection. Better save first. Demon flames lifted alchemy enormously but were savage to refine. Walking back, I passed a knot of disciples buzzing about spirit medicine fields in the secret realm. Natural, untended, full of wild plants. First come, first served. I walked past without joining. Spirit medicine fields, if true, would indeed be fatally tempting to an alchemist. But I was not going. The money I needed I could earn in my own yard. Back at 91, I raised the formation, set 2 furnaces side by side, and struck while the iron was hot at the switching master EM named. Left furnace lit, count 3, switch, right lit, count 3, switch, feed the left, switch, feed the right, my hands moving between them and my divine thought jumping along. The first day the switch ran about 4 breaths, the third 3, the 5th 2.5. On the 7th I sat up to midnight and pushed it under 2 breaths, then tried dual furnace true chi pills. Left success, right exploded, a charred mess at the bottom. I scraped it out, threw it away, cleaned the right furnace, added fresh herbs, and began again. The second try, left success, right success. I poured out both and counted, 6 from the left, 4 from the right plainly rougher, 2 surfaces not smooth, and 1 a shade dark, but both had held. Dual furnace refining, true chi pills, and only true chi pills so far, and once I sharpened the switch further, dual furnace chi gathering, or even spirit ascension, would not be beyond reach. Efficiency doubled, output doubled, stones doubled. I set the furnaces side by side and looked at them. 2 breaths, then went to the window, the moon clear, the bamboo rustling. In my pouch, the communication slip warmed, a reply from my grandfather. His aged voice rose from it, that my letter was received, that my father and uncle would watch matters in the city, and that I should cultivate in peace and not worry over home. And that girl Nasoso, he added, had visited 2 days back asking when I would return to the market. He coughed twice, and said she had not seen me in long and missed me. Then in a month, I answered, on my 11th birthday. At the same time, the Biolak outer contingent set out for the Changgun City secret realm. A month on, I returned to the Biolak market in early autumn, cooler than midsummer. The leaf tips of the street plants were yellowing and cultivators hurrying past, low-flying artifacts streaking overhead now and then in faint ripples of power. In the front yard of the family's rented courtyard, 2 girls sat at a stone table. One was about 5 feet, a baby-fatted face still, and a water-blue dress with twin buns, a worn romance clutched in her hand, Nasoso. Across from her sat a taller girl in gray-white narrow-sleeved martial dress, a leather belt at her waist, her long hair tied high, her features clean and heroic. 13 now and already 5.5 feet, the first curve showing she was So Yun. Nasoso slapped the book to the table and puffed her cheeks and demanded whether So Yun thought that man did it on purpose. Did what? So Yun asked. Me, Nasoso cried. A whole month, 7 message slips sent and 3 words back. Got it. And she held up 3 fingers. 3 words. So Yun lowered her head and wiped her blade and said the young master was cultivating at the sect. Busy. Busy cultivating, all he ever did. Nasoso snapped and flipped the book open to a page. She pointed out that this young lord in the story wrote the heroine poems every day, broke willow branches to see her off, and played the zither in the moonlight. So Jan glanced at the cover, The Clearwater Lovebirds, and noted it was a novel. What was wrong with a novel? Nasoso said. Novels were written by people too, and if they could do it, why could not I? She tucked the book away, rested her chin on her hands, and stared at So Yun wide-eyed, asking her to tell the truth whether she thought I actually had, and she gestured a while, feelings. So Yun's hand paused on the blade, and she said Nasoso was his betrothed, so why ask her? Because you have spent the most time with him and understand him best, Nasoso said. So-yun thought and said the young master's kindness never showed in words but in what he did. That was not the same, Na-so-so said. How was it different? So-yun asked. Na-so-so could not say, only felt something missing. The moonlit walks and clasps hands and flower wishes of her novels, none of which I had ever done. She brooded, then her eyes darted and she leaned in and asked whether So-yun liked that man. The cloth on the blade stopped, and So-yun did not speak. Na-so-so's eyes went wide, for she had only teased on a whim. Yet the girl had stopped wiping her blade entirely and her ears had gone bright red though her face stayed cold. You, Na-so-so stammered. I do not, So-yun said, sheathing the blade with a clack. Your ears are red, Na-so-so said. It is hot. It is autumn. So-yun stood and turned to go and said she would go practice her blade. Stop, Na-so-so called. Chasing, you have not answered. Then a shadow fell from the gate and blocked the sun, and before she could react, 2 fingers pinched her cheek, light but absurdly precise, right on the fattest of it. A year gone and this girl had turned into such a gossip, I said lazily. She whipped around. I stood before her, a half head taller than a year past, near 6 feet, in the blue-gray outer robe, a pouch and token at my waist. My features had matured to the first hard angles of a young man, my eyes as steady as ever. She stared 2 breaths, then lunged at me like an octopus, her arms around my waist and her head in my chest. She cried that I was finally here, that if I had not come she would have gone to the sect to corner me. I rocked back half a step and looked down at the twin buns. You have gained weight, I said. You have gained weight, she shot back. Your whole family, then stopped, for the family lived right here and all of them were present. She swallowed the rest and punched my chest with all she had, her fist landing dull, and shook her numbed hand and asked if I wore iron armor. No, I said, my gaze passing over her head to So-yun a few steps off. She had tucked her blade away and stood straight, hands at her sides, and said the young master was back. I smiled and nodded and said it had been hard on her this year, keeping everything running. It was what I should do, she said, lowering her head. Na-so-so poked out of my embrace, looked left at So-yun and right at me, and quietly curled her lip. That was it. One of you are back, and one in it was hard on you. Not how the novels wrote it. I let her go and patted her head and said to go in and greet grandfather and the rest. We would eat together tonight, a private room booked at the moon-gazing pavilion. The moon-gazing pavilion, her big eyes lit, that absurdly dear spirit food house. It was a birthday, I said. Why settle? She grabbed my arm and dragged me in, So-yun following 2 steps back, watching us bicker, her fingers stroking her blade hilt without her knowing. In the yard my grandfather lay on a lounge under the veranda with fresh spirit tea. My father ran the 13 swords with his sword intent prototype flowing, unable to feel right without a round a day, and my uncle came from the kitchen with sliced spirit fruit and near dropped the plate at the sight of me. My father wrenched his sword back and rushed over to hug me, and I sidestepped him clean and told him to mind his image. He lowered his hands sheepishly and said he had just missed me. My grandfather sat up slow and looked me over, a year taller and much more settled, standing on another level than children my age, and asked whether I was stabilized. The 5th layer is stabilized, I said, and he nodded and asked no more. He sipped his tea and said the girl had been here near 2 months, wandering the yard every day asking when I would be back. Na-so-so whispered that she had not, and he ignored her and asked what the moon-gazing pavilion had cost. I named a figure, and his cup paused. Spendthrift, he said. It was a birthday, I told him, and my birthday was tomorrow. Celebrating tomorrow's birthday today was just right, I answered, and he fell silent. It was crooked logic just like my father's. Though even my father could not have coined it, my own creation. My uncle set the fruit down and got everyone seated. I counted the faces, grandfather, father, uncle, Na-so-so, So-yun, all who should be here. One more joins us tonight, I said, drawing a slip, and my father asked who threw a mouthful of fruit. Senior sister Noe-un, the inner disciple who brought us to the market. I sent her an invitation. His chewing slowed half a beat, that senior Noe at she refinement perfection. Would she really come? Not sure, I said. No reply yet, and it was fine either way, I would not force it. My grandfather gave me a thoughtful look. That evening we went to the moon-gazing pavilion, the grandest spirit food house on the market's East 3rd Street. 3 floors of carved beams with 2 pale spirit lanterns brightening the street. Our heaven-grade room upstairs was ready by our arrival, the manager leading us in with honored guests. This way. The door opened on someone already seated, and my steps paused. Noe-un, in a lotus root dress with the intersex white sash, her hair pinned with green jade, more composed than a year back, her power wrapped tight and leaking nothing. She rose with her tea and wished me a happy birthday. I walked up smiling and said I had not thought she would come, having had no reply, and had guessed she went to a secret realm. A secret realm? She covered her mouth and laughed. She was about to reach Foundation establishment. Why go to such a place? My heart stirred. A year ago, newly arrived, she had still fretted over a foundation establishment pill quota. "Congratulations, senior sister," I said. "She should thank me," she said low by sound transmission, "that the pill quota came because the third elder spoke for her. She suspected it had to do with me, and I neither owned nor denied it. I had not sought an RN out, but her opening a door for Noeun was likely for the task of escorting the family. A favor returned. My grandfather came in with my father and uncle and cupped his hands at her, saying a year on she looked more radiant. She smiled and called him too kind. We took our seats, I in the honored seat since it was my birthday, my grandfather at my right and Noeun at my left. Na Soso was shooed to the far side by my father to sit huffing beside Soyeon. Spirit food came like a stream: steamed spirit rice, roast spirit venison, spirit mushroom soup, jade vegetable rolls, a pot of medium spirit wine. 2 cups in, my father's tongue loosened and he pulled my uncle and Noeun into talk of market business, my grandfather chiming in now and then. Nasoso gnawed venison with one hand and tugged Soyeon's sleeve with the other, whispering that Senior Noe was so pretty. "Did she not lean a bit close when she talked to me?" she said, and Soyeon said she was overthinking it. Nasoso insisted she was not, and Soyeon plugged her mouth with a mushroom. She chewed with puffed cheeks a long while and finally went quiet. The meal ran near 2 hours, and when it ended I went to the counter to settle, but the manager said the bill was already paid. I glanced back. Noe-un stood at the room's door, narrowed her eyes at me, threw a playful wink, and turned down the stairs, the white sash swaying twice under the lantern glow before she vanished at the bend. My father hiccuped drunk behind me and said this Senior Noe was quite generous. I ignored him. The next day was my birthday, the yearly draw. I'd bathed, changed, and burned incense to pray as I had every year since 8, never slacking, for immortal cultivation holds that sincerity brings results, and whether the system cared I could not say, but I would rather believe it did. Prepared, I sat before the stone platform and sank my mind inward. The panel rising, host, age 11, green odds 2 in 10, drawing. White and green shone at once, flickering by turns several breaths, and at last the green froze. My breath caught, for it was 3 straight years of green. Luck cannot be explained, and mercifully I needed no explanation. It named a green entry, success at a young age, that while my lifespan ran above 7/10 my cultivation speed tripled, and while it fell below 7/10 my speed dropped by the same. I read it over 3 times. Tripled. My speed would become 3 times its own, on the one condition: lifespan above 7/10. A chi refinement cultivator's standard span was 150 years, so 7/10 was 105. At 11, until I turned 45, this entry was pure profit, triple speed and no cost. But past 45, triple slowness. Others 1 day of cultivation worth my 3. I weighed it. The gain was plain. That before 45, a tripling would be a qualitative leap toward foundation establishment. The loss was plain too, that if I could not reach foundation establishment by 45, or could not break through after it, the rest of my cultivating life would be crawling through mud. But then again, if I reached foundation establishment, my span would stretch to 300 years. The higher I climbed, the longer the good half lasted, and the earlier the breakthrough, the more heaven-defying the entry. Success at a young age, worthy of the name, a good entry. Yet my heart did not fully settle. What if I later drew entries with ill effects, one cutting lifespan or slowing cultivation, and stacked them on this? The system's second version could not destroy entries, but I recalled a line of fine text, an upgrade to a third version after foundation establishment. Would the third destroy trash entries? Uncertain, but at least an extra thread of hope. I put the entry away and rose to go and test it. I swallowed a Spirit Ascension pill and ran the Blazing Flame formula, and on the first cycle my fingers gripped my knees. Fast. Too fast. My power raced the meridians more than in order, faster than before, the medicine converting in a surge. Where half an hour once digested it, this time only the space of half a cup of tea, fully refined. I opened my eyes and did the sum, the root multiplier 2. Blazing Flame formula at perfection. 3. Plus the pills 3, my speed was near 8-fold to start, and now the triple of success at a young age. I was stunned. 2 breaths. The speed just now reckoned out was not simple addition, it was multiplication. The triple ran as its own multiplying factor. I did not dive straight into seclusion. Like an ordinary boy of 11, I took the warmth of my birthday, walking the market with Nasoso, buying her odd little trinkets and its strange spirit foods. She chirped all the while, asking of the sect of interesting people and fun times. I told a few sect stories, but mostly just listened. I truly liked these quiet moments, for at the sect my nerves stayed tight and every step careful, and only here, back with the family, could I truly loosen. So Yun was quieter than Nasoso, following silent behind, handling small things, passing me tea when I needed it. I took time to guide her blade, for though her martial talent could not match my father's, her diligence and focus made me look at her anew. Under my guidance and with true chi pills, her blade improved by the day, breaking into the 7th layer of the postnatal realm. My father and uncle ran the shop, which had grown busy as my pills climbed in output and grade. A good haul of stones each month. My grandfather sat in the yard drinking tea, basking and scolding my father now and then. 5 days passed, and though I did not deliberately cultivate, success at a young age worked in silence, my power piling several times faster than before. Even the spirit refining technique's 2nd level gained without effort. On the 6th morning I packed to return to the sect. Nasoso waited at the gate early, eyes red, and asked when I would be back. When my cultivation makes progress, I said, rubbing her head. Then come back soon, she said, tugging my sleeve. I will. So Yan handed me a storage pouch of the spirit fruits I liked, and I thanked her and nodded. My father and uncle came to see me off, my father patting my shoulder and telling me to cultivate well and not worry over home. My uncle promising spirit chicken soup next time. My grandfather watched from afar, a son of the family grown. I waved and said I was leaving. Nasoso finally covered her back and said I would come back. I did not look back. Behind me were reluctance and worry, but I knew better that my road lay ahead. Cultivating immortality is a journey of endless farewells and endless going on, and to keep those reluctances from becoming regrets I had to grow stronger. Foundation establishment. Golden core. At the Sex Mountain Gate I fed my token power. A flash of green opened the ward and I stepped into the familiar spiritual chi. I carried spirit wine and food to Master Eam's residence. Though he had not come to my birthday, a Foundation establishment alchemist attending a gathering of chi refinement juniors being unfit, a disciple visiting his master on return was proper. I knocked 3 times with no answer, then 3 more and still none. I frowned, for he was usually in refining or meditation and rarely out, and as I made to knock again the door opened on its own. The one at the door was not Master Eam but a woman in green martial dress, 27 or 8, tall, clean-faced, capable-eyed, her cultivation the 8th layer of chi refinement. I was startled a moment, then recalled he had mentioned a servant at the 8th layer, and this was surely her whom I had not met before as she had been visiting kin. The Biolac sect kept few servants, prizing self-reliance, and only an outer elder or above could arrange one. Servants were those who fell short of entry and leaned on background or kin, and her 8th layer higher than mine was no wonder trailing a Foundation establishment alchemist. She asked if I sought Master Eam. I named myself as his disciple and cupped my hands. So it was Senior Brother Yuke, she said, turning respectful, and said the master was not in. Every year on this day he went to the Valley of Heroes, deep in the West Peak Valley, where the sect buried its heroes. I might look for him there. I thanked her and left. Deep in the West Peak Valley, the spiritual chi ran denser still, but waited with a solemn gravity. None of the outer disciples clamor, only mountain wind in the trees. The further I went, the heavier the sense of age washing over me. The trees ran taller, and their crowns blocked the sun to leave mottled light. Broken steels by the road carved with old runes telling of past glory. I lightened my steps through a bamboo grove, and at its end the view opened on a vast valley, countless tombstones standing dense as far as sight reached. Some were plain bluestone, some warm jade, some cast of unknown metal with a dark sheen, each carved with a name and a brief life. The Biolic sect, Tomb of Heroes. Disciples were few, 1 or 2 in inner dress holding incense before a stone. I reined my aura and moved among them. The nearer the depths, the grander the tombs and the deeper the runes. There were former elders, former true disciples, even nameless heroes who left only a surname, their cultivation and deeds cut into cold stone for later ages. In the very deepest part, in an isolated spot, I halted. Here several tombs stood plainly taller and grander than the rest, and before one sat a gray-robed figure cross-legged with his back to me. It was Master Eam, several empty wine jars before him, and their fragrance in the air. An unopened jar at his side as he looked up at the stone and seemed to murmur to it. I did not step forward, only waited quiet not far off until he finished. After a long while he sighed and picked up the wine, and as he made to open it, I walked over. Master, he did not look back and said, "You have come." This disciple came to pay respects, I said, cupping my hands and setting the wine and food beside him. Only then did he turn and glance at me and point to the space beside him. Sit. I sat. He opened the jar I had brought, its scent spilling out, poured himself a bowl, and tossed me another jar, telling me to drink a few with him. I caught it and poured my own, the wine crisp sweet, then a warm current into my limbs and bones. We drank bowl after bowl, he silent, his eyes on the stone, and I silent too, following his gaze to it. Large characters were cut there, Tomb of the Biolac Hero, Eom UK. Below in smaller ones it read, born to a small family of the eastern region, named Eom UK, possessed of a special spirit body from childhood and a high-grade root, prized by his family. My heart stirred. Uk. Master Eam's surname was Eam, so was this his elder brother. He sipped and said low that he had had an elder brother named Uk and raised a finger to the stone. Him. I listened. He was different from birth, Master Eam said, born with rosy light filling the room and a strange fragrance. When tested, he bore a high-grade root and even a special spirit body called the Mystic Ice Spirit Body, and the family made him its hope and poured every resource into him. And he, Master Eam, gave a self-mocking smile, was only an ordinary medium-grade fire root, his aptitude plain, far beneath his brother. With a family's resources limited, and his brother there, he was naturally passed over. But he never envied him, for his brother was good to him, cared for and shielded him. When he was young and slow, the family elders were cold and cutting, and it was his brother who stood up for him each time. He secretly gave him half his own pills, and taught him his insights. He even gave up chances for his sake, saying cultivating alone was too lonely, and hoping he would walk the immortal road beside him. I was moved. His brother's speed was extreme, Master Eam went on, breaking into Foundation establishment before 20, the youngest in family history, and the sect took him as a true disciple. There he was a fish in water, climbing in a few decades from early Foundation establishment to Foundation establishment perfection, touching the golden core threshold. He was called a genius rare in a century, the sect's future hope, and all thought he would break to golden core and become its pillar. Unfortunately, he said, and drained his bowl, heaven envies heroic genius. Master, I said, Senior Eam UK. He did not answer straight, only poured again and said his brother gifted past measure and exquisite in cultivation should have soared. But for the sake of the sect and its thousands of lives he gave himself. He could have lived longer and gone further, and yet he did not choose to flee but to protect. He drank another bowl, his eyes blurred yet bone clear, and said that in that year he himself had only newly reached Foundation establishment when the sect met an unheard of crisis, a demonic path invasion. A demonic path invasion, he repeated, and in the cultivation world the words meant a bloodbath. Suffering for all living things. Those demonic cultivators had somehow learned the sect's grand protection array would weaken briefly under the strike of the once-a-century spiritual chi tide. They gathered several golden core devil heads, dozens of Foundation establishment experts, and thousands of chi refinement demons to attack just after the tide passed, before the array recovered. A catastrophe. The sect was caught off guard, and though the array did not wholly collapse, it was torn open with a great crack. Demons poured in like a tide, and the disciples and elders fought bloody with heavy loss. He had been in the fighting, he said, raising his left arm to show a hideous scar deep into the sleeve, left from that time. The demon's aim was clear, he went on, the spiritual vein eye in the back mountain, where the sect's foundation lay, and if breached, the consequences were past imagining. The sect master and several golden core elders were pinned by demonic path golden cores. The sect's Foundation establishment cultivators picked off one by one, and the sect fell into a desperate place. Just as all thought the Biolak sect would be destroyed, Eam stood up, already at Foundation establishment perfection, a step from golden core. He chose not to run or hide, but charged the spiritual vein eye to plug the crack. Plug the crack, I said, startled. Was it self-overreach or deep loyalty? Master Eam drew a breath and steadied himself. He said the crack the demons had torn in the spiritual vein eye was no common spatial rift, connecting within to an alternate space full of devilish chi. Once fully opened, the devilish chi would pour ceaseless into the sect, fouling the veins and turning it a demonic domain. Eam used his mystic ice spirit body to freeze that crack by force. His physical body was the catalyst, his spirit body the array eye, and the cost his whole life's cultivation, and so he sealed the rift. He did it, Master Eam said. He really did it. Alone blocking the whole demonic path army, alone saving the sect. I pondered. Sealing a spatial crack with one's body was a spirit body so terrible, and wondered whether bronze skin and iron bones upgraded could ever reach a spirit body's level. Master Eam raised his bowl to the stone and drained it. But he himself, he said, was frozen forever within that crack. His body, his divine soul, his everything become part of the seal. The sect at great cost recovered only a small part of his remains, and this was his tomb. Posthumously they honored him as the hero elder and raised this valley. Each year this day was the anniversary of his sacrifice, when the sect sent people to pay respects, though few truly knew the story. It touched the sect's reputation and the core secret of the spiritual vein eye. To the world, the sect had said the crisis was resolved by the sect master and the elders together, and Eam's name was pressed down. I felt the weight of it. A hero who shielded the sect with his life, his name suppressed by the sect. What sorrow that was, known to all as a prodigy in life and in death, visited by one man alone. Then Master, you? I said and looked at him, and his gaze went complicated. He had been right beside his brother, he said, and watched with his own eyes as he walked step by step toward that crack. He watched as he stopped with his own body a river of devilish chi that could destroy everything. He watched as he was eroded by the chi and swallowed by ice, and turned at last to nothing, and could do nothing. He blamed himself, too weak then, able only to watch helplessly, and if he had been a little stronger, if he had even half his brother's talent, perhaps his brother need not have died. Master, Senior Uek was a true hero, I said softly. Did I not think him foolish? He asked. No, I said, shaking my head. He was great, and to give oneself for protection is the noblest character, and though I would not do the same, I admire those who do. He smiled, sensing I told the truth, and called me a brat with a way with words, and raised his bowl again toward the stone and toward me, to the hero. I raised mine and clinked it, to the hero. I sat up from a wooden couch the next morning, spirit wine truly not to be drunk carelessly, and dispersed the fog in my head with power. Master had already gone, the stone house empty but for morning light through the lattice. On the table sat two things, one a thick beast skin ancient book, its cover blank and plain. Beside it, a bronze three-legged two-eared medicine cauldron, archaic and heavy with age, beast mask patterns on the ears, beast claw legs, steady and grand. I picked up the book first, heavy in hand, and on the first page found a yellowed slip in his hand. My disciple, it read, do not spread word of last night. Let these complete records of pill formulas in this bronze cauldron be your birthday gift. Cultivate diligently and waste not your talent left by Master I put the slip away and smiled. This was no birthday gift but plainly hush money, and yet the hush money was substantial. I opened the book, and the formula on the first page caught me, the hand vigorous, the notes and diagrams detailed. First order low-grade chi-gathering pill, spirit recovery pill, detox pill. I flipped on, my heart quickening the more I saw. The formulas far past my imagining. Not only every first order pill, but the second order too. Second order low-grade, everlasting life pill, foundation establishment pill. And at those three words I paused. A foundation establishment pill. A spirit pill to carry a chi refinement perfection cultivator into foundation establishment. Its value was so high it was a strategic resource in any sect. Priceless and off the open market, its formula reachable only by core elders, and Master had handed it to me outright. I drew a breath and read on. Second order medium grade, evil warding pill, marrow cleansing pill. The book held near all the known and weighty formulas of the sect from the first to the second order, even some I had never heard, plainly precious by their materials and difficulty. I closed it and turned to the cauldron, stroking its ice-cold body with its faint flow of power. No common thing. Master demand on an alchemist's tools was near harsh. Nothing catching his eye below Tier 1 high or the second order. I set my divine sense inside, the space roomy, the walls carved with deep runes forming a faint spirit-gathering array. At the core sat a cluster of gentle flame, not common fire, not my demon fire, but earth fire, a second-order low-grade cauldron with its own earth fire array. I was shocked. It's worth far above the books, for with it my second-order refining rate would climb greatly, and I could even attempt pills that wanted higher flames. His drunkenness last night had not been wholly senseless, and to hand such things over then was regard and trust both, with the intent of hush money besides. 2 months on, at morning sword in the yard, my sword intent prototype had gained much. Will severing God carried an extreme threshold, prizing not moves or power but only will. It was a thing ethereal and elusive, wanting a deep grasp of the sword Tao and a strong divine thought to bear it. After a year and 2 months of cultivating it, today I finally touched its threshold. Sword in hand, I began my stance slow, the tip trembling faintly, stirring not a ripple of power yet seeming joined to some momentum between heaven and earth. I closed my eyes on the faint vibration at the tip, not the sword shaking but my will. I sought fusion of divine thought and sword intent, no longer two things but one. An invisible edge. A faint hum rang in the yard, and my eyes snapped open, but sharp light in them. Sword intent prototype, minor achievement, and will severing God. Initial mastery. A strong confidence surged in me. A full-force will-severing God now could kill a chi refinement perfection cultivator. Not a suppression of power but a strike of will. Invisible, aimed straight at the divine soul. But the price was as great. At the 5th layer I could loose at most one such strike, after which my power ran dry and my divine thought took a heavy backlash, leaving me spent. I sheathed and stood, my chest heaving. Sword intent minor achievement. Just as I sat in the joy of it, a hurried knocking came at the gate, and I frowned. I lived low and quiet, and but for Master and Lord Jade's sword, few disturbed me, and this knocking was not Lord Jade's sword's way. I reined my aura, sheathed the sword, and went to the gate, and through the formation saw 2 people outside, one of whom put me instantly on alert. The man wore a green robe now dark with blood, tattered, his right arm gone, half his body against the wall, his face pale, his lips tight, barely holding himself up. It was Lord Jade's sword. Beside him, propping him, was a girl in the prime of youth, in a plain dress with a delicate face, now somewhat panicked as she knocked. My pupils shrank. Lord Jade's sword so gravely hurt, and his right arm. Without hesitation, I opened the gate and waved them in. Seeing me, he forced a smile, and with the girl's help staggered in and sat on the stone stool. I went to him, my eyes on his right arm, the sleeve torn on a bloody, mangled wound, oddly with a thin scab already formed, and the flesh writhing as if slowly healing. "Your arm," I said, grave. He gave a carefree smile that tugged the wound and made him groan, and waved that it was fine. He had grown used to the pain of a severed limb. "How long since it was severed?" I asked. 3 days, he said. 3 days and much time lost on the road. But I did not dwell on it, for a golden core family could mend an arm easily. A severed one could be reattached by a top flesh regrowing pill, or if gone, regrown by a second-order everlasting life pill, and the U family could afford it. The arm is not urgent. I cut to it. What happened in the secret realm? He was silent a few breaths. There were 2 passages in it, he said. One to Huksong Ridge, our entrance, and the other to the demonic path. The yard went quiet. On the 3rd day inside, all was fairly normal, he said. Real spirit medicine fields, good wild plants, everyone busy harvesting with their guard down. Then, on the night of the 4th day, demonic cultivators rushed in from the other passage. A calculated ambush on the unready, he said, gripping his knee. 2 of the Chi Refinement 7th and 8th layer seniors leading fell in the first wave. What level demons? I asked. The highest Chi Refinement 9th layer, he said. But many, well coordinated, and they had poison. He turned his left wrist to show a dark purple pattern spreading from palm to forearm, left by devilish chi in the meridians, suppressible with a few evil warding pills. Was the right arm cut by a demon? I asked. Not cut, he shook his head. A 9th layer demon cast a corrosion spell, and the whole arm's meridians rotted with devilish chi. So he severed it himself, or it would have spread through his body. Severed it himself.